I'd like to call to order the September 5th, 2023 Columbia Borough Council work session. Could I have a roll call, please?
Council President Singh.
Here.
Councilperson Kaufman.
Here.
Councilperson Stahl.
Here.
Councilperson Fisher.
Here.
Councilperson Price.
Here.
Councilperson Littner.
Here.
Councilperson Burghardt.
Would anybody care to
And Mayor
offer,
Lutz.
Oh,
Sorry, Mayor. I got
would anyone care to offer an invocation? If you would like, please rise for a moment of silence. Sharon, would you like to lead us in the pledge, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Announcement of executive and information sessions, there were none. Are there any additions, deletions, or reorganization of the agenda needed? I'm not aware of any. Anyone else? No? Could I have a motion to approve the agenda as published?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilperson Kaufman, second by Councilperson Price, to approve the agenda as published. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. Citizen comment, non-agenda items only. The first sign-up we have is Mary Wickenheiser.
Okay, good evening. I added one thing to my list here. I just parked up here in front of Home Goodies. There's a trash pile up there that was piled up there at 2 o'clock this afternoon when I came up Locust Street. I thought that trash there was 6 o'clock prior to the day of pickup. Okay, it looks like crap up there. I'm kind of going to pull Frank here. There were a couple people asked me about things and I couldn't give them an answer. Again, 732 Chestnut Street. There was a zoning ruling against that. I understand that the party dropped the appeal. I'm hearing from the neighbors it's ongoing. And the neighbors actually feel that they are leasing it for longer periods of time, like 30 days or something like that, and there is never a vehicle parked in the backyard. No. They have yet to see one park in the designated parking. I had another person address 8th and Walnut Street.
Can we make sure that that's followed up on? Because I want it done sooner rather than later, because that they're just thumbing their nose at us now.
I just feel that I'm not going
No, I'm right there with you. That's,
you know, I was
I'm
through
sorry,
this
that's-
with planning, the zoning hearing, all of this, and it's still an issue with the neighbors up there.
yes.
Okay, 8th and Walnut Street. The northeast corner is a single-family dwelling. I'm being told that they're tearing that backyard up to put 4 parking spaces in off of 8th Street. And that, according to the neighbor up there, the party who owns that property had expressed the desire to break it up into multiple units. And they were told they didn't have parking. If they had parking, they'd be able to do that. I don't think they can. I thought we do not allow, no matter how much parking you have, you're not going to take a single family home and break it up into multiple units. And looking at that, I don't see how they're going to put 4 cars in there without those cars being back over the sidewalk. It's just, like I said, I'm pulling the Frank.
Well, I think Mark looks like he has information about that, so.
Heard the same information, have not been able to validate it. From what I understand is the homeowner may have said that just to annoy the neighbors, that you have no permits or any application to actually have that take place.
Okay, but they're up there tearing, they've got stone and stuff in the street, and they've got all the sidewalks torn out.
They have a building permit, but it's for, it's not for a multi-family. It's a single family, and it's for a remodel.
But again, I'm questioning
Parking in the,
how deep that is. So, just, thank you very much.
Thanks,
The
Mary.
people I represent will be happy to brought it forward. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for those. We'll keep an eye on both of those. We'll follow up on the potential Airbnb. And the other one, when we talk to the owner, they're just doing the renovations to a single family home. So if they're putting parking for themselves in the back and it's legal, that's fine. We'll look into it, but I'm pretty sure they're not trying to bust it up and do it.
My question is, if that yard is not deep enough to, they would
Right.
have to parallel park like they would on the street. It doesn't seem like enough room to
Well,
be
and
able.
there's not a curb cut there, so,
No.
That's the question.
yeah, that's the question, there's not a curb cut, so
Yeah.
how are they
Oh, they've
getting,
got it all torn out.
they tore the
The
curb?
garage torn out.
Whoa, that's not acceptable.
I'll go look at it. We'll check it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not acceptable, the curb is our stuff.
It appears that the curb has already been torn out. Okay. Thank you.
It's all the same.
It's
not walnut.
It's
It's
8th
based on 8th and walnut, but yeah, it's on 8th Street.
Yeah, to me, wasn't eight,
Some of 8 was, I don't think that block of it was.
No.
All right, the next one up is Frank Altrich.
I thought Mary already did Frank's part.
Sorry, Fred.
Thank you. Good evening, folks. I'm kind of limited in my time, so if you want to answer later on, that's all right with me. The overdose, I understand there was an overdose in one of the parks. If somebody could give some information on that, was it homeless or what happened, or is anybody I know, or whatever. Another thing, I think everybody would agree it's very, very hot. I think it's one of the hottest summers I ever had in Europe. And I know we don't have the dust of windows in the municipal building, and we paid for awnings, paid good money, and why the awnings were not put up, maybe you can give me that answer too, because I'm not quite sure.
Frank, I'll just have really quick, it was just an oversight. Spring got busy into summer with the public works crew, and about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Jake and I were standing there, we're like, we forgot the awning, so it was purely just an oversight this year.
No, that's a shame for being a hot, I was going to ask who's in charge, but Katie spoke up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Frank, I'll also respond to you as well. We did have an incident in one of the parks. It's an active investigation right now, so I can't go into a lot of detail about it.
There was an overdose.
There was an incident in one of the parks.
Okay,
Okay?
all right, I appreciate it, could follow up on it. 15 Chestnut to 16 Chestnut. I presume the water company's replacing the main. Anybody know that when they replace the main, if they're lowering the main, because when the street was done years back, they couldn't take that crown out of the street because the pipes were not too low. So now that I think they're replacing the main, are they going to lower the pipes and straighten that street out? Because I don't want to live on there. When you open that door, it just, it's icy or something, gets that curb. Boy, that'd be something else.
Years ago, when they did that street, they tried to take some of the crown out, but the gas lines were the problem, not the water.
Oh, I didn't know what, I knew pipes was not.
You're correct, Frank. The pipes weren't low enough to take most of the crown out. It's the gas lines.
Okay, when they do the water line now, are they replacing the main, am I correct?
Yeah, they're gonna replace the water line.
Okay, are they going lower, maybe lower?
I can't tell you about the water, but the gas is the problem on the crown. Now, if they replace the gas, probably that could happen.
Okay, well, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
Quality of life, I have to ask, what's the quality of life in your neighborhood? I haven't had any problems recently to this past weekend. The house next to me had a party, loud music. I could put up with it. Watch the race, get up about 11 o'clock to go to bed. And I know when my water is running. I can tell by the pipes. I went in and checked the water meter and it's just spinning. And I checked every faucet in the house. Went out front, that outside spigot was all right. Went off to the side, someone stole my spray nozzle and turned the water on full. I don't know how long that was on. That's what bothers me. I won't know till I get the water bill. But I haven't had problems outside of motorcycles, loud noise. It's just what's moving into the neighborhood. The safety department's got to keep their eye on things, what's going on.
Frank Cutler down.
Yeah. I brought up before about the vehicles that went to the auction. Somebody's lied to me. Staff, I got an answer from staff, and I got an answer from here in council, and those 5 vehicles was not, they were bought before the deal was made with the auction company. And it really doesn't matter because we're going to get screwed in the bargain in the long run anyway. The deal with having that day off, the borough getting a bonus day, actually, the borough manager could not do that. You might have got bad information. If you think he could, that's all up to you. But if it come down to it and went to court, the borough manager doesn't have them powers to do that. Borough manager wants to give a half a day off or take care of one person or something, he cannot do that. Where I come from, I work for the Outrigger Engineers, we call that job security. You give job security and you'll be here for a long time. The more you give, the more you'll get. So, okay, thank you. That's all I got.
All right, and Beth, did you want to comment, or you're just?
Yeah, I'm just here to.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure.
Thank you.
All right, Mayor Lutz, Chief Brommer.
Yeah, let me start with, this was kind of a quick deal. A week or so ago, I received a letter from a former Columbia resident. He grew up in Columbia, Joseph, and he goes by Joey Smith Jr. Joey is in the Navy. He's going to retire after 26 years of active service in the Navy. So Joey sent me a nice letter, and he sent me this flag. This flag was flown on the aircraft carrier that he presently serves on, the SS Nimitz, which is the oldest active aircraft carrier in our fleet. And his request was, since he's retiring and a Columbia native, would we erect this flag in his honor on September the 11th. And I got back to him and said, send me the flag and we'll take care of it. Along with that, what I intend to do, I have a proclamation here I want to read. And on September 11th, we'll see that this flag gets hung either out here, and we'll get some pictures and send them to Joe and send his flag back, because I think he wants his flag back as a memento. So we're going to do that for Joe Smith. And I have a proclamation here honoring the retirement of Joseph S. Smith Jr. And it reads, whereas Joey Smith is having been born and raised in Columbia Borough, and whereas Joseph Smith chose to defend his country, joining the United States Navy, and whereas Joseph Smith has completed 26 years of honorable service, and whereas Joseph Smith has chosen to retire from active service in the United States Navy, and whereas Joe Smith served his country aboard the USS Nimitz, the oldest active aircraft carrier in the fleet, and whereas Columbia Borough men and women have a long and storied history of serving our country, and whereas in honor of his retirement, a flag previously flown on the USS Nimitz will be flown at Columbia Borough Hall on September 11th, 2023. So now, therefore, I, Leo Lutz, Mayor of the Borough of Columbia, do proclaim September 11th, 2023 as Joey Smith Jr. Day in the borough. I also ask all residents to take a moment to honor this Columbia hero and all those who have lost their lives on this September 11th, 2001 day. So we'll see that he gets that, and we'll see that that's done. I think it's wonderful that he lives in Washington, the state of Washington. So, and I surmise that he will retire back to Washington. But
It's very cool, though.
it's nice to hear something like that.
It is.
One of our former residents.
Yes, it is.
Mayor, are you going to send him a copy of the proclamation?
I'm going to send him a copy of the proclamation and some pictures and the flag.
That's awesome.
And you brought
Just a reminder, the annual police bike auction will be this Saturday, September 9th. Bike auction this Saturday, September 9th,
At what time?
9 a.m.
I make,
Yes, thank you.
All right. The first workshop item we have is discussion on the parks and recreation in the borough. I asked for this to be added. It's been many months, actually I think most of the year since we've heard anything from our Parks and Rec Committee. Their meetings have been few and far between. We approved the application for that grant from DCNR. We got the grant from DCNR. And we've not heard anything from them on their plans. They were all invited to be here this evening. I think as a council, we need to really think about what is needed, if we need to give them more direction on what we're doing with our parks. I'm kind of looking for suggestions here. I mean, I think the Parks and Recreation Committee is pretty important, but if we have a group that's not meeting and is not really doing anything, is that doing a service to us? Do we need, I mean, we're already down people. We need to find more people for that board first and foremost. But the people that are on there, you know, I don't know what else to say. We really need to figure out what we're doing. I'm sorry, we do have Hope here. I'm sorry, Hope.
Yeah.
When was the last meeting?
This has failed.
say, do you want me to?
Yeah, when?
Yeah,
This has failed several times.
exactly.
And, you know, what I've found with volunteer groups, if they don't have anything to do, they're going to fade away. So I think we need to make sure that they are active and actively participate. But also, I think you need to vet the people going on there to see if they're really serious about doing it. And I know there was.
I thought we did this.
Yeah, but I thought there was some talk about possibly the Parks and Rec, you know, you have other parks in town, and maybe we should be looking to a combination of those things. Yeah, of melding it together, Jansen's, Locust Street, the old Columbia Public Grounds and all, and melding it together and trying to do something that way. And maybe we just need to take a step back and see what we can do
Well, yeah,
in that vein.
Well, and I thought that there was stuff that did need to be worked on, like, the movies in the park, they weren't getting back, we took on that equipment, we're storing it and everything else, we committed the money to get the movies and all of that stuff, and we didn't even get the request for the movies and everything from Tammy until.
Oh, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the decision was made that in order to save money, you would go with less expensive movies and not as often this summer. Is that correct?
Well, I was gonna, kind of as a general update, there was, I believe, 5 members of the Parks and Recreation Board. I joined it as part of, like you were saying, Coney Crossing, and to better connect with the members. I think that the members of the board are genuinely interested in participating in events in Columbia Borough Parks. I specifically want to mention that I think Sylvia Garner is a wonderful leader of that. Unfortunately, all over the summer months, she did not have the ability to get quorum. So she was sending a lot of emails to try to get information like movies in the park confirmed, because there was not enough members of the board available to meet, and there was rules that we weren't allowed to discuss things, so it was making it very difficult. So the last time we did have a meeting, I called in, because I had COVID, Sylvia was on a train, and there was like 2 members here, and that was in May. So we were trying really hard to like make meetings work, but it was certainly a struggle to get those things together. And I will say that we do have a big project to work on in the Maple Park grant. Sylvia was working really hard to get together a fundraiser for the Maple Park grant. She had gone through a bunch of ideas. I went out to look for auction items, and the borough staff came back and said we should hold off because we need engineering stuff to be done on the Maple Park project. And so that got paused to us, not that we stopped the project or like didn't work on it. We were all ready to go out to do a summer fundraiser and then couldn't work on it. So I think that there's agenda items that they want to work on, but because it's so small and we're under the regulations of being a public board and not just like a volunteer advisory group, it makes it super difficult to proceed forward. Whereas because I also serve on the River Park group, I can say that as a volunteer committee there, even if it's only 2 folks that can come, we can have a discussion and hammer something out and then continue forward. And so I don't know if that is a possible shift in how the committee functions, but
I think part of the issue was we were requested to increase the number on the board to 7, and we did. And that has exacerbated the issue with getting a quorum. Because now you have 2 empty seats, so you only have 5 members of the board. 1 is out, you're done.
Yeah.
So, now we've exacerbated the problem, and then when you can't get a quorum, that's because, people aren't coming to the meeting. So, that's.
For us, if 2 people can't come and there's only 5, the three people can still get a lot done, but they're not allowed to. So,
Exactly.
Yeah, I see your point. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
kind of a problem.
So that's a problem, but that happened because of a request from the board. So, we're sort of at a catch-22. I was also under the impression that the whole thing with Maple Park was, there was this additional money that was applied for, and we didn't get that grant from Pepsi or whatever it was.
I went over the T-Mobile grant.
So
we didn't get that.
So we didn't get that. So I was figuring the board would be coming back to us, telling us what was being removed from the plan or what, and no one has given council an update on anything on that project.
Well, the gap that was left was what the fundraisers were for.
So, and
the sponsorship information. So we were looking to the borough for guidance on like sponsoring picnic tables within the plan, sponsoring the pavilion and things like that. And we were told to not do that fundraiser at this time. And so we had to stop.
Right, because, part of it, I mean, I had gone into a meeting and said, you know, we need to look at that because as a borough, we need to figure out the whole fundraising thing and what we can do, what we can't do. And also, before deciding that that was the direction that was going, it should have come to council to say, yes, this is what we want to do. This is how we want to proceed.
So the process right now is we have to go out for an RFP to hire a design firm and then put the construction out to bid. When we hire the design firm, it's at that point, the design firm will take the work that Ann has done, analyze it, bring it forward, and before we finalize and send out the bid, council has to approve it. So the reason council hasn't heard yet is we're still in the process of getting the final design plans ready with the amount of money that we know we have. So it's this part of the process, not a miss in the communication.
Yeah, because we were actually told to like just hold, like that we didn't, that as a committee, we couldn't do anything about Maycall. So everybody had like plans and ideas and like fundraisers, and we thought we knew the direction we were going, and then it was when we came back with like, this plan is not ready for you guys to move forward, and we were just told to wait.
Well, I mean, that's at least helpful to know because no one has even told council that that's where it stood.
Yeah.
We had no idea.
Yeah, and there was a lot of work that you did in planning the gala, and that was not brought before council at all. And you made all of these plans, and we didn't know anything about it.
And again, as a member, I pulled like parts of those, okay, we're doing a fundraiser. I think that there's a question that you all have to ask yourselves, because the borough, we did go back to the borough and ask a lot of questions. Are we allowed to do the fundraiser? Are you allowed to get a 50-50 ticketing? Can you get a small music chance license for us to be able to do these things? And ask lots of questions before the gala was in motion at all. And we waited for those answers for long enough that it was like, we're down to the wire, should we even be doing a fundraiser? And then finally didn't hear back about whether or not the borough could participate in any of these fundraising questions, and still don't know about those, but we did know that everything was on hold. And so it's hard if you want a board to be in control of a project, but you're not ready to answer the questions that they have, or you're not ready to support what the vision that they're going for. And I think so there needs to be some kind of structure for better communication between the board and the council, or the board and the staff, because the board is talking to staff and asking questions. If you prefer them to talk to council and ask questions, I think they need some guidance.
Well, I think we have it set up that every board has a liaison.
Yeah, yeah. So
And Barb is our lead. And so if you're not getting the response from staff, certainly that's what the whole point of the liaison and the lead is for, is reach out to Barb, and no one's reaching out to Barb. She has no clue. I'm asking her questions. She doesn't even know.
Yeah,
So
I've reached out to Sylvia multiple times. How are things going?
Okay.
Do you need anything from me? And never a response.
And to be fair on the other issue, we were asked about the small games of chance. I asked Evan, we're not allowed. I got back to Sylvia and told her, we can't do that. We're not allowed to do it. I actually sent her the citation of the state code that says they are allowed, but by nonprofit organizations, etc. So Sylvia and I had a whole conversation that maybe the Lions Club or another organization, the fire department, one of them could sponsor those things and raise it in behalf of them. So all that was communicated back to her a long time ago.
Okay, well, so, I mean, I guess the question for council is, do we want to maintain the committee like it is? What are we tasking the Parks and Rec Board with doing? How do we proceed on this? Because something is obviously not very viable at this point.
I can make one suggestion from somebody who's like in the park all the time, right? Is that the parks feel disparate, I think, because they are managed by different people. So you've got Old Columbia Public Grounds, to Leah's point, you've got Jansen, you've got even Gladfelder Memorial Foundation. And so all of these things don't feel like they're together, but those groups have to talk to each other, right? Like, somebody's going and asking questions to Columbia Public Grounds when we want to do something in Locust Street Park. Is there a way for you guys as council to leverage your leadership and say, the smartest thing for Columbia residents is that these borough park leaders, whether that's me at River Park, somebody from Jansen, somebody from Blackwater, and somebody from, Old Columbia Public Grounds, meet on a quarterly basis. If you make a volunteer committee to just oversee general operations, problems, questions, I think that would be really wise, and there could be a place for individuals who are citizens to join as volunteers as well, but maybe it doesn't make sense that it's formal quorum committee, but I do think that those groups that aren't participating should somehow be brought under the umbrella. And I know that we've tried to reach out to Jansen and Lucas and have conversations, but they haven't come to any of the Parks and Rec meetings we've invited them to. So
Yeah, I think because they're privately owned, it's gonna be hard to get them to
so
the
too.
table. Although they have invited me to some of their board meetings to ask questions and.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that would be beneficial to the town as a whole. Unfortunately, I don't know that it is gonna happen.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, I just think that when, like as council members, when you think of parks, you're gonna think of those parks and include them, right? And then that means that we should also include their leadership, so that's how I.
Those parks, I think they run, like Blackcombs especially, they run so efficiently. They're just great. And, but I think that our inner city parks, Maple Park and Rotary Park, they need attention because they serve a certain group of people that need to have that kind of exposure, that recreation. That's where they gain their social skills, their emotional skills, and that's where most of the youth that go to our schools, those are the parks that they're going to hang out with, and they're the parks that need our attention. In my opinion, yeah.
But taking a suggestion from Hope, maybe you do something like the River Park Steering Group. The Parks and Rec Commission creates an ad hoc group that meets quarterly, and you invite the other representatives from the other parks. Those folks don't want to go to monthly meetings. I know that.
Yeah.
And you won't get them to monthly meetings.
Right.
But there's a real good chance that you can get them 3-4 times a year together and say, hey, what are y'all doing? And do some brainstorming on an ad hoc basis where you don't have to go by the rules and regulations for committees.
Yeah.
And you might be able to draw it together. You may even be able to generate some interest from folks on those groups that want to become members of the Parks and Rec Commission at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest an ad hoc committee if it's an option. I understand it's not an option in the restrictions that you have, but certainly there's people that are passionate and they are coming when they can, but I don't think that they can commit to what you need for a full-size board.
Right.
So I could be
And
done
that's-
as a member of that committee.
I mean, is the answer changing our code? Well, there's several Parks and Rec things mentioned in the code. Is there a way to change the board into like an ad hoc so that it's not so that it's more like the River Park and do it that way?
We absolutely can. You can create ad hoc committees for a variety of purposes. The borough code acknowledges the borough's ability to form a Parks and Rec advisory board as a
And then-
but we can name it something else, create a different type of board that does not directly fall under the sunshine law.
And then if we do that, let's just use the Maple Park project, then all that would come directly to us for approval and everything else. There'd be no need for ongoing,
Committee meetings.
like the approvals and this and that. And the advisory board can be the ones to say, hey, these are the movies we recommend doing, and still bring it back. We, can approve it and still get that paid for and taken care of and still have it done.
As long as they're not taking official action, right? As
Right.
long as they're just a recommending body, you're
Right.
more okay as far as the quorum issue.
I mean, maybe that's,
What about the Parks and Recreation Foundation that's in our code that we had brought up?
Yeah, that's a whole different group. That's a foundation to do fundraising and manage money for the parks. Not games a chance though, nice try.
right.
I'm not in favor of changing the way committee's set up. I think, like the mayor said, without direction, without goals, it's hard to stay focused. It's hard to show up, especially in the summertime. It's hard.
So what are our goals then? What are we tasking them to do?
Well, I mean, we sit up here and we say, you know, take care of people, take care of.
Yeah, I mean, I think
But realistically, we need to come up with, reasonable expectations where, you know, the fundraiser is a great idea. And I think what has to happen is, as council, we need to be more involved as far as, maybe as a committee, you guys come to us once a month or once every 2 months, or if you come with an idea, come to us at the next meeting and just give 5 minutes of what you want to do, and at least allow us to discuss and move forward.
Well, that's what the hope was, that that's what was gonna happen, and
Right, but I'm saying, the committees are branches of council, they're not branches of staff.
Yeah, I think the committee feels like if we had a meeting and it was in minutes and it went to the council person that's the liaison, that it's being communicated to you. Does that make sense?
the problem is,
I
we
stopped
wouldn't,
getting minutes.
we don't get the minutes until they're approved, and if you're not having a voting meeting because you don't have a quorum, we don't have minutes. So the next time I'm gonna get minutes, it's gonna be from February. That doesn't tell me what you're doing.
And I asked your secretary, Ms. Andrews, to just, you know, we have the formal minutes, just drop me notes of the things you discussed so I can keep them abreast of what's going on. She did it the first 2 months, and then I haven't seen anything after that.
Yeah, so then I think everybody that's on the Parks and Rec meeting thinks it works like an ad hoc meeting, and they think the minute we have a meeting, there's minutes and they go to you, and the person that's there from, you know, the borough staff that sits with the committee, like, has taken notes and forwarded them to you and let you know.
Yeah, no, she
Yeah.
stopped doing that.
But again,
Yeah, I think that everybody thinks
the
we're
committee's,
in the know.
the committee's answer to the
agree
council.
I agree, it's hot.
The committee's answer to the council. So, I understand going to Mark because he's here every day, or somebody else,
Yeah, but you're saying,
and get a quick question or whatever, but it still falls on us. So even if Mark says, sure, you're allowed to do fundraising, you're allowed to have lottery tickets or whatever, okay, we still have to approve it. So it still needs to come through us either way. And I think that's where the communication, the other thing is, with all the projects going on in Columbia, Mark can get sidetracked and busy. If you announce it in council, then there's at least
7 sets of ears that are going to have it on their radar
Right.
and go back, you know.
well, and I think you see that, like, the River Park group has worked really well to communicate. You're the liaison for that group. We don't meet when we don't have things that are important. We do meet when things are important, and they're better communicated to the council.
Right.
And so it seems to me that copying something that's working, which is the ad hoc basis, is a good way to do it. Because it seems like the committee that you have is not clear on how communication is happening with you guys. Even I was not clear on the fact that you're not getting minutes until they've been approved, which would be so late that there's no way you're being informed, because we're having council meetings without quorum and haven't met since May.
Right.
So you guys don't even know that we had a discussion in May which approved, like, doing a fundraiser and doing movies in the park, and then all summer happens, yeah.
Right.
So you can see how like, it's just, yeah. it's really-
Yeah, I don't think I've seen minutes all year, literally all year.
I tried to look for them too, and unless I'm missing, because admittedly, I may have missed them, but I was looking at August of last year.
Yeah. But yeah, but it's obviously not functioning super well.
Yeah, the other suggestion I have is we have a lot of clubs in Columbia. And I don't know if we want to reach out and like team up with different parks or something like that. Because they would add a fundraising arm to it. And they have the manpower to work with park cleanup or something like that. Where then it becomes a more to do committee than just.
Well, you have the park club, the Columbia Park Rangers and some other
Oh,
clubs
we got
that are already,
oh, we
that
got
they
her.
do the cleanup.
Right.
So like Parks and Rec Committee can't do cleanups if there's already all the cleanups scheduled with another group that's doing cleanups. Like they're not gonna, we feel a little bit like we're definitely not gonna do double duty on that one.
Right.
We'd rather support them.
What would an ad hoc committee look like? Like, would they be an ad hoc to council, or?
And also like, I'm just a member, so I'm speaking as myself and not the committee.
Right.
Like, I just need to.
No,
say hi,
yeah, we got it.
Okay, cool, I just wanted to.
I'm not holding it, yeah, no.
Not leave Cool.
I think if a board can put together an ad hoc committee for a specific task, I think a great example recently was the comp plan committee. That the chair of the planning commission put together an ad hoc committee to then drive forward the comp plan, which was then ultimately presented to the planning commission and brought forward.
The problem with that scenario is, if they commit, if they create an ad hoc, let's say movie night committee, they still have to go back to
Correct.
Parks and Rec and get approval through the Executive Council.
Now, what I mean is, what if there was not a Park and Rec board committee? What if there was an ad hoc committee that?
But
To council.
doesn't an ad hoc have to have an end
It's supposed to be for a specific purpose. I don't think you create them as an ongoing standing board.
So I would say it'd be more of an advisory board, not an ad hoc.
Yes, but it's Park and Rec Advisory Board is what it is. That's what the current board is.
Yeah.
I mean, my own opinion here is, one, this board is absolutely mission critical to so much of the quality of life issues here in the borough. And we've talked for a long time about, going after the peer-to-peer grant that the state offers to bring in a person who can help for a period of 5 years, is it? 5 years to almost be like a Main Street manager, if you will, to help manage parks and programming. Then the goal is after 5 years that becomes self-sustainable within the system. I think we need to strengthen the board, encourage them to find ways to, be more engaged and be able to attend the meetings, improve the communication between us, and see if we can get this board in a place where they feel valued and they're bringing forth recommendations and guidance to council. There's just too much going on and there's going to be more. I mean, we're talking about adding another 17, 18 acres on the southern part of the McGinnis Tract as park space. We're looking at spending close to almost $600,000 to update Maple Park. We're looking at a multi-million-dollar upgrade to phase 3 of River Park. I think we have to look long and hard about a long-range plan to manage and maintain and program these parks.
Right. Would it be beneficial for us when we have those monthly reports to include Parks and Rec and have someone from the Parks and Rec board to come here monthly and give us a monthly report of their activities?
Sure. I don't think we need a monthly report from their monthly meeting. I mean, they have a meeting and then we're gonna.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
It's only once a month.
Well, right, I mean, and they're not coming to the meetings anyway,
Maybe
so.
quarterly?
Quarterly, yeah, I think that was what we had hoped before.
Yeah.
We had said that before, like 2 years ago. We
Well,
had
maybe
hoped
that could be one of the requirements now, that they give a quarterly report, and one of the committee members comes to council, just the way chief comes for the fire report.
Another option, Barb, I look at you, is you can be on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board and be on Borough Council at the same time. Those are not compatible offices. And I know that raised some questions last time, when.
Well, it raised questions because she wasn't officially
They weren't
appointed.
officially appointed, but one option would be, we could appoint you to be officially on that board, and then you can then also then, as a board member, bring reports back to council on a regular basis.
Well, now there's a thought.
You attend meetings anyway, why not make you a voting member of that board, and you can still then bring stuff back to council as an advisory person.
Or actually, you could do it for any one of us who wanted to.
Right. Right, any member up here,
Right.
you being the liaison with you right now. And I think that could be an option to keep it connected to council.
It certainly help with quorum.
And have a forum.
So just a clarifying question, Barb, have you been attending the meetings?
I have not.
As a
I've
part of
gone
that.
to, since they started, I mean, I've kept in communication with Sylvia.
Okay.
You know, through email, when they say things. When I get notice, I'll tell her if she's doing good, or I'll ask her if she needs any help, or if she has any questions, you know, that I'm here to remember that I'm here for her. But no, I do not attend the meetings. I think I've been to 2.
Do you think it would be helpful to, even if you aren't an official board member, to attend those, just to be in the know? What's going on?
Eric comes to ours.
What, Mary?
Eric attends our River
Yeah.
Park meetings.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is kind of helpful to get a vibe of what council may or may not be comfortable with too. So I know we asked Eric in River Park tons of questions on like, do you think this will go through? Is this a good idea? So it's definitely helpful. It's definitely helpful.
I think maybe it would be helpful if another committee, if another one of us besides me, took the liaison responsibility and went there everyone. I think that would be, and honestly, in January, when we did the what do you call it, reordering of everything, I was going to request that with whoever council members were here. So if we wanted that to happen now, that would work.
So your preference would not to be the liaison?
I think it'd be better for them, you know, if someone else was the liaison.
You know, when the parks were very active in Columbia, there were 5 of them. They were run by the Columbia Playground Association. They had no tie whatsoever in the Columbia Borough. They were autonomous, and they worked very well. And someone said about a foundation. I don't really know. I'm not saying you should do that, but I think you ought to give some of that thought. Get it out of here, and let park people run the parks.
So we actually approached.
Rotary Park was run by the Rotary for years.
Yeah.
And
That's why it's called Rotary Park.
there's a lot of neighborhood stakeholders around Maple that are very interested in the kids there, and
Right.
very interested in filling that park with activities. And if it went into the hands of the neighborhood, and, you know, and let the neighborhood invest in what takes place in their parks.
We did approach Huntsville Rec to see if they would be interested in providing management of programming here. And Barb, you're the one who contacted them. I think right now they're having staffing issues, but they don't think they have the bandwidth to be able to do that right now.
Right, yeah.
I had a conversation with them too about playground camp. When the Parks and Rec board, one of the committees, Kurt, had really wanted to start a summer program. And so I took some time to actually talk to the individual at Hempfield Rec that runs Hempfield areas. And they're not able to add any more parks at this time, but it is an option. And obviously, it's not a lift that a committee can make. A committee
Right.
cannot run a summer
No,
playground camp all summer long for kids. Like,
no.
yeah, just the government clearances wouldn't allow
Right.
that to happen, let alone the fundraising that we.
But an organization could.
But the organization is gonna have to have a contract with the borough, they're gonna have to have all kinds of legal documentation to allow them to fundraise on behalf of these properties, manage these properties, watch kids on these properties. My conversation with the Hempfield rec manager that they have now was like, the reason that we are able to do this in these parks is because the Hempfield rec is joint owned between East Hempfield and West Hempfield, which gives them access to all of the properties owned by those two townships. So they are set up legally and contractually to operate in those areas. They are not legally set up to operate within the borough of Columbia because they don't have any of that. So the groundwork to build something like that is massive. We think it's small potatoes. It's like, why can't you just let kids hang out in the parks all day? But it is actually extremely difficult.
I said back when it was successful, it was 5. And the borough only owned 2 parks. There were 5 parks.
But like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and Boys and Girls Clubs, there are other organizations besides recreation centers who could hold a summer playground. Churches could hold a summer playground.
Well, I think that was one of the problems. I remember they spent a lot of time and burned up a lot of brain power trying to come up with summer programs. And rather than working to get the basis done first, let's work on the properties first and set things up. They tried to do too much, and some of them I think got burned out and got disillusioned. I think, they bought all that equipment and everything, and it never transpired. I think that was, they just did all too much and couldn't handle it, and then it failed. I think you got to worry about what you were all talking about, the redoing of Maple Park and those kind of things. River Park Phase 3, get those kind of things going, get a physical plan together, and then look at programming.
Your partners will be programming because you build good parks.
Yeah.
And so I suggest, as you think about parks, to not think so much about movies in the park or having an activity in the park, but to fulfill the parks plan that y'all paid for in 2019. You have park plans for Rotary Park, you have park plans for Maple Park, you have park plans for River Park. These are all the onus of the borough to create and make. And then once they're real, your clubs, programs, foundations, groups will be using them for summer programming the way that you want them to be used. So I do think that the committee that you had prior to this one was obsessed with programming and was burned out. And that's not the members that you have now. Your members now are aware that prioritizing, building the parks, doing the Maple Park grant, and was much less focused on creating constant activities within the parks. We know that the partners and the individual, the groups should be doing that. So I will say that you don't have a committee that is kind of off track. They want to follow the plans that the borough has paid for and made and that have been decided by your citizens, and make those real. That's been the goal as I understand it since I joined, which was like last.
And I would agree with that. I would agree with that. And I do believe that that is where the direction we should be going and not worrying about all the programming right now. We worry about our physical things. So, if that's the direction we tell the Parks and Rec Committee to go, how do we get the communication back to us and not just with staff and then it doesn't get to us so that we know that that's still being taken care of? You know what I mean?
Well, I think the liaison just has to be there.
Yeah, the liaison has to be there. The liaison has to be more, engaged with them to get the information back to us.
I think you're all on the right track now. I mean, best example, Old Columbia Public Grounds. They don't do anything.
No.
They manage that property. All the programs, as Hope says, all the programs that happen at Locust Street Park, other groups bring in.
Right.
Lions Club.
And
That's
Right,
what
and that's
happens.
what we need to do.
You
We
manage
need to
the
manage
park.
our park.
The other group, the groups will come in and use the park.
So I had a question on the fundraising. Was that the job of the Parks and Rec Board committee to raise those funds, or what were those,
Yeah, we had a
Fundraising
discussion
idea.
about the Maple Park project,
were
and
those matching funds?
we knew we didn't get the T-Mobile grant. There was
Okay.
supposed to be our 50 grand of matching funds.
Mhm.
And so, Mark came to us with the plan and was like, this is the price sheet, like what makes sense to get rid of? Is there anything that we could get rid of? And as a committee, everybody was like, it's maybe not that big of a squeeze if we can have sponsorships for some of these things that exist, right? If people can sponsor a picnic table and a grill and things that are in the park, we should be able to pull up some of this. So why don't we, and the idea was construction's not gonna happen immediately. We have to go through a process before that. So if we can use from now until when construction starts to raise the matching funds, instead of asking the borough to use taxpayer dollars, that's the route we'd like to go. And so that's what we brought back to Mark, is like, instead of cutting, this is how we'd like to go about doing this.
Do what has been done in the past. For example, the press box and everything up the high school was all done by a group. Okay, so you go like to the Lions Club or the Elks or the Moose or something like that, and you use them as your umbrella to do your fundraising.
Okay.
That's what's legal, and that's how you do it.
Okay.
You use them, a sponsor or an umbrella organization that uses their
collect and
501c3.
And that's the information I sent back to Sylvia, to say, hey, listen, just find an organization that can do some of these fundraiser items. The other thing we did say, which I do still stand by and like, is like we do down at River Park, a family could sponsor a picnic table or a bench or a barbecue grill, whatever you wanted, other amenities we could put in there, we could put it out there that people could buy that as a sponsorship for South Fifth Street Neighborhood Association could buy 2 grills and a bench or a picnic table,
Well,
some
Sylvia
group.
talked about the bricks that
Yeah.
are at Rotary, and like the brick would be great for the pathway because there's bricks in the plan.
Right.
Like, why can't we sell bricks? So the plan was to have like a day at Market House where we sold bricks all day to anybody that wanted to come. So like we had set up, like, talked to Chris and said, can we be here for the whole day and like sell these bricks? We just needed guidance on, is it allowed and how many could we sell, kind of thing. And that's when we realized we needed the park plan to go a little bit further before we knew, can't let people sponsor 7 grills and there's only 2 grills in the park, kind of stuff.
So, speaking of grills, this just reminded me, I've gone by Maple several times. There is like a gas grill sitting there with no lid on it. Like, do we know? It's been there for a couple of weeks at least. And that's another one of those things I forgot to tell you today, Mark. This is what happens when we don't eat for several weeks. Yeah, it is like literally right at the side of by the pavilion. It's there.
Someone probably had a picnic and left it there.
Yeah, so I don't know, but yeah, there's a
I'd be more concerned if the gas bottle was there.
You know what, honestly, I didn't
Try to get
notice
down
that.
to it.
Yeah.
But we have an organization in town that this would stretch their mission just a little bit, would be the wonderful umbrella organization. That's called the Economic Development Corporation.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That's who I'll be talking to.
Well, we're talking to Bill about a Trail Towns program.
Well, absolutely, there you go. It all fits.
And even the Businessmen's Association, perhaps.
Yeah, the Merchants Association we actually reached out to about, like, if we're doing a fundraiser, would you donate? And a majority of the members got back, if you need silent auction items, let us know. But now I'm like, I don't know if we're allowed to do a silent auction.
You are to get a sponsor.
So,
It might be me.
Bill, he's the CEO.
yes.
How do you solve the problem of the membership of the board?
I don't know.
do you go back to 5 members? If you've got a core of 3 kind,
River Park and the Parks and Rec together?
you know, 3 dependable people.
I'm mandated to be on it by contract, it's that one.
I mean, I don't know.
That's something they have to decide though and vote on?
No, I mean, that's ordinance, that's, council decides that. Do we want to shrink the board back down? It's like, we just moved it a year and a half ago.
I will say that at least when I started, and I think that's when most of the new that committee started, that, we were told that that was in the works before we were appointed.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just said like, if y'all think it's a good idea, go for it.
Yeah, it was,
It was a recommendation brought forward by some people from the previous board to say, hey, let's
Can
expand
you do
it.
an up to?
It is, it's up to 7 members.
up to 7 members, but that still makes quorum 4.
No. It makes quorum the number of appointed board, right? Active members? Just as one
Yeah,
quorum?
it's those that are appointed.
Okay.
So we have 5 people currently, so quorum's 3.
Yes,
It's
correct.
quorum 3 or 4?
3.
I believe 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 if we're up to, wait, can we verify that?
Yeah.
No, you're right.
2/3 of 5.
It's those that
No,
are appointed.
It's more than
Not your
20.
not counting your vacant seats. They're not vacant seats, they were never created. They're vacancies.
They are vacancies.
They are vacancies. We have 7, we appointed up to 7, and we've had 7, so.
See, that's what I'm saying. You should say up to 5 members or up to 7 members, but only those members that you physically appoint, then that's the number you need for a quorum. So you can make it 5 or you can make it 7, but if you only appoint 5 people, you only need 3 people.
Yeah, yeah, because that's how the language is in that,
Yeah.
in the ordinance amendment that we.
Shall consist of not more than 7.
Correct, yep.
So if we currently only have 5 members,
You just need
quorum's 3.
Correct.
Yes. So that's okay?
So then we're good. I mean, we still ultimately would like to have 7 members, so we still need to solve, getting people on the board.
But the
We
thing
did have
is,
somebody
that
resign.
Good catch.
So.
Yeah, I know, so you only have 5. You were number 6.
I'm 6, okay.
So then without Buck, you're 5.
Okay,
So you have 5 members.
then it's 3. Okay.
I want Sylvia know that 3 is quorum.
Okay.
Yes.
And then I would also love
You
the,
open so
a
many-
council member joining the board to make it 6, I think is a great idea. You guys can figure out the whole liaison member squash, but I would highly suggest regular attendance from anybody on council.
I try and get there when I can. Unfortunately, it's like, it's 6 o'clock and I don't work till 6 o'clock. So even if I'm like, unless I can sneak out early, I can't get down here.
And the other thing I might suggest is virtual meetings for that group. A lot of people are available, but it is a 6 o'clock meeting and they're not getting back from wherever they're going
Well,
from. I don't know what rules are.
with sunshine, that's not always,
Not allowed.
no, because you have to have, since we're out of the state of emergency, you have to have physical quorum, not virtual quorum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even though a township can have a virtual forum.
Yeah, I know,
This
a
is
township-
Pennsylvania, it makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, there's a lot of bullpucky in that, in different classes of municipalities. There's a lot of inequities. Civil service.
Yeah, I know you're working on one, yeah.
You guys?
All right, anything else?
Just do the 15-minute rule out the door.
I didn't bring it up, they did.
This is a work session, Frank. There is no 15-minute rule on the work session.
I don't know the rule. That's what.
It's a work session. That's what we're here for, is to hash these things out.
I don't know that.
What?
Heather, did you want any comments on the letter that was part of the package, or you're good with that?
Yeah, I mean, when I asked for Parks and Rec, I wasn't planning on the River Park stuff, that was in there, and I was kind of not sure why it was in there, but.
Because at the last meeting of the River Park Committee, they wanted to send a letter to council to say, hey, we'd like to move forward with, looking at beginning phase 3. So I thought, let's go ahead and put it on this agenda, so you guys, at least, it's just more of an FYI, Mary, just
That's
to
why I
say.
said a heads up.
Yeah, it's a heads up that River Park would like to recommend council move forward with this idea, that's all it's for.
Well, it was my understanding that Derek was working on the permitting stuff.
Correct.
So it is moving forward, it's
It
not that
is.
we can't do anything more, right?
And Derek, when we met at the last time, Derek was at the meeting and we talked about what parts of this can we go ahead and go forward with. And we think that the phase that council has already authorized him to begin planning on, should be done, so.
Fixing that, the road.
The road and the
thing,
culvert and
And the
everything.
culvert, but we have to get Army Corps of Engineer and DEP and all of those, and he said it was gonna take us 2 years.
So Derek is
to get that
still
stuff.
working on getting all those permits in now.
Right.
And what I told Mary initially is that we bring it forward to council for approval of the expenditure once those plans and we have the numbers done.
Right, yeah, that was kind
But
of
you
my
want to put that
understanding.
letter in there to
Oh,
say,
okay.
hey.
Yeah, thank you.
As a communication to council.
Now, also, that being said, Derek didn't move forward because I had the same question. He didn't move forward with the permits because the bridge was supposed to start.
The 462 bridge, so we.
That's what prompted this.
Now that it got pushed back, now Derek's moving forward, trying to get the permits.
Well, yeah, because, I mean,
But we didn't know that at the time.
yeah.
Right.
So, the
So I'm
second,
confused because the amount of time that the bridge was gonna be worked on was the same amount of time it would take us to get the permits. So why would we have stopped when we could have then began right after the bridge?
they weren't sure of the delays like we're having now.
Right, we were afraid that what's happening now, we actually were, the timeline would be shifted, and we didn't want to get a permit that's good for 5 years, and end up 4.5 years into it, to say, okay, now you can start.
Yeah, in fact, I think this all happened around the time we started looking at 30
Right.
and saying, hey, we work on 31st.
Now we're still in that thing, because if it takes us 18 months to get the permits,
No, we're,
No, he said,
He's, has everything all ready and done, so he can expedite the permits and get them in, so we're trying to get those rushed now to get them through.
okay.
did he
Yeah.
actually comment he would have that in time to possibly do construction next summer?
All right, so, but here's my question now. Is he also the one working on the stuff for Maple Park?
His staff.
Are we,
Yeah.
so now we're in a situation where we have to prioritize which one we want to move, right? Because one is going to have to sit while we're working on the other.
Maple Park most likely will move forward first, with the funding received from the state, the
Right.
20 grant. So Jess Fieldhouse there has worked with, DCNR to get the RFP together. DCNR is doing that now. As soon as we get the go-ahead from them, we can get that on the street, get a permit, to get that going. But we didn't want to lose time in the hopes that if we can get funding to get this first phase done, then we'll do that. But you're right, it's a juggling act of all
So,
these things.
but here's my question then, because now it's the beginning of September, so we're coming into budget season. If we're getting the Maple Park thing moving, I don't want to plan on any fundraising, none of that stuff. I want to plan that I need to come up with the matching funds. So I need to know if we're gonna say that's gonna move next year. And then Derek's saying, oh, we can work on work on River Park next year. Do we have the funds to do both? I don't know.
I don't know yet either. 'cause we need to
And
get all the
so I don't wanna sit here and say, yes, we're gonna move forward on this, and yes, we're gonna move forward on this, only to find out that we require more funds than what we're gonna have at that time. And I don't wanna give anyone false hope that any project is gonna get done, but since we already have the money from DCNR, Maple has to take priority.
And what I told River Park is this is great, we still
Yeah.
have to find the money, and we can't move
Right.
forward until the
Right.
money is actually available.
Right, so, but you just said, Derek said we can do this next year. Right away, I started to panic, like, that makes it sound like we're already committed, and I don't want that to.
It's just a
Impression.
timing, it could be possible, if you got on right now, these permits could be issued by, during construction season of next year, is what he said. So it's just a matter of getting everything in line to do these things and timing them out, and River Park is in an odd place because of the delays that are coming for the construction.
Yeah.
If you have the permitting done by next summer, you have 5 years to complete it.
Right.
And permitting still good.
Right.
So.
And that's
so that
fine.
takes that out of what you're concerned about. That moves that out to where Maple is bid, done.
That's
River Park.
fine, what I heard, we'll be able to get in construction next year, and that raised
You'll
a whole
you'll
nother
be a
set of
bell,
concerns.
You'll have everything.
it'll be a bell
Right.
construction. But you will choose not to do it for
But
another
then,
year.
at that point, we can start looking for other grant opportunities for that funding, which would be my hope, is that we could find some grants for that. I mean, we already got the grants for the engineering part, so it would be my hope that we would spend
It'll be another growing greener.
a portion of that time looking for that grant, so that we are not, okay. All right, whew. I had a little panic attack there, I'm thinking about the budget, and I'm like, oh my gosh, but oh man, I broke a sweat.
But that's the conversation we keep having, with all these projects, and they are great and wonderful, we still have to be able to fund our portion of it.
Exactly. And, that's where the whole idea of let your project drive the funding and not funding drive the project comes in, is that we get these projects, the groundwork laid and ready to go, and then we look for the funding to do that. So, all right. Is there anything else we want to talk about in the Parks and Rec? Anyone? Any further?
I'll just say that I'll make a point of going to the meetings on Thursday that they meet. See if that helps.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, and I think we need to do a better job getting them to communicate, or I don't know if it's that the communication is not there when they're canceling the meeting in enough time, or if it's not being posted, but we need to do a better job getting it on the website that it's canceled. There have been several times where I was figuring I was gonna go, and then it gets canceled and it doesn't get put on the website in enough time.
They'd only know when you get here for a meeting.
Well, yeah, but normally they know before the meeting that they're not gonna come.
I do actually have one more thing, since Beth came out tonight, and she was a previous Park and Rec board member. Do you have anything you'd like to say?
Well, I think the way that you guys are moving ahead sounds really good. I think having the parks done first before you do programming, we were concerned with trying to do programming, but didn't really have an idea of how that should work. I think that's a great idea. So, I mean, you just have to concentrate on, you need to get something across that finish line and get that done, and then move forward from there. I think that, and especially trying to use private organizations to do the programming, I think that's really a good idea too.
And I apologize, Mark will update his board email distribution letter.
No worries.
But we're happy to see you.
But we're happy to see you. All right. Well, there we go. Next one, council discussion on the need for a public relations firm to assist with key projects and situations that occur in the borough. This was put on here by Todd, and he is not here.
So we can post it. If you'd like, if you want to have it.
We can talk about it real quick, I'm against it.
Yep, I am too.
Did you say yes?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, that's what I said.
There you go.
I think that was already said, that you were different.
Nah.
We were tasked about finding a replacement PR firm to replace Gavin.
Yeah.
I've asked Todd for some advice since he's in a related field. We have looked for some, we've talked about it. Todd wanted to bring it back up here again as a discussion item before we went forward and actually brought somebody on board, as whether that's still even needed or necessary, so.
Or should we wait until he's here to continue?
I would ask him that. That's
Yeah.
your call.
So, my whole thought on this whole thing
Yeah, I want to hear your thought too.
is, we really have two faces of the borough. Mark, you're the borough manager, mayor. So, if the news cycle would come here, or a word has to get out, I would assume that either the borough manager speaks on the borough's behalf, or the mayor does. The part about the incidents in here, I don't think that has to go any further except for how we communicate a rapid response, both internally and externally. Again, then, just like you said tonight, doesn't have to be anything other than, you know, an incident did occur, or investigate, or stay out of the area, you know, or some fine, whatever. But, I think we need to work on that, but that's something that we have to do internally here. That's not an outsource. If there is a disaster, well, not just those two, we have Jake Barner too. So if there's some kind of disaster going on in Columbia, you have the EMA, you have the mayor. Even if it's a Saturday, I assume Mark would come in to talk to the news reporter or whatever. We have the software now that we're using. We have a website, we have Facebook, we have Crime Watch, we have all kinds of outlets that we can use to distribute information. I just don't see a need to hire a relation.
You know, Steve and I talked about this, and I'd say I'm not totally opposed. My question was, why do we want to add another layer in the communication process? In other words,
I think the question right
Mark or the chief or I have information, we give it to this person, and then it goes out to the media. Let's cut that middle guy out of there. You know, at 5,000, let's cut him out. Now, if there's some big thing that you really want professional media out there, then look at someone on our, but for this day-to-day operation, you know, keep it internal.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right.
And we're looking at right now, and Chief came up with an excellent idea that he wants to look into. You know, you saw the numbers of Crime Watch, the Facebook account, and TextMyGov. I think you all saw those numbers. Can we integrate one or all of those systems? Can we integrate some of those systems so that when something goes out, for example, on Crime Watch, that it's picked up by TextMyGov and Facebook, so that you're putting it out one time and it hits 3 different media streams? Well, I don't know if it can be done, but my gosh, the world of information technology is so broad nowadays, I can't imagine it can't be done.
I hesitate to say that everything that goes on Crime Watch should go on to TextMyGov, just because of the nature of a lot of those posts.
No, you would have that option, Heather.
Right, okay.
Yeah, you'd have that option. Yeah,
But I do
absolutely.
think they automatically share the Crime Watch to Facebook, so that's already integrated.
Yeah,
So
and
two of them are integrated.
there's two phases of it, 2 parts of this. One is internal and the other one's external.
Right. I mean,
So we're working on both of those.
I think something else, you know, in discussion with Mark this morning, I think something else that would help us with external communication, like we were saying before, is you can't share things, and you know, there's things you can't share, and that's all well and good, but the example I gave was the incident down here at 3rd and Cherry. That Saturday evening, I was sitting in my house and I was watching WGAL, I was watching the news. And I saw the reporter standing there on the street corner, and she said the residents in the area were concerned because because the police chief or the mayor and no one from the borough was here. And that kind of struck me like, wait a minute, we're not doing a good enough job here then. If residents are looking for someone to assure them that it's going to be okay and no one's there. But also, along with that, if I don't ever have a problem, I've said this before, I don't have a problem telling any member of the press, the borough has no comment on the situation. But if I have to say that with surprise in my voice because I didn't know there was an incident going on, that's not good. So even if it's maybe we have a canned statement that every one of us has access to, that can be, a few things can be tailored here and there, just to say, we are aware there's an incident, we have no comment at this time, information will be given at a later time. That way it's all ready to go, and we know it. But we still need to know when an incident is happening so that any of us are able to issue that statement if we're asked. That may be something that we look at too.
For years, we've operated one way for years. One incident happens, and this whole fervor comes out. You don't know the whole story behind that WGAL reporter.
No, I don't, but that's...
That was done in retribution.
But that's what I'm saying, like, I mean...
I knew what was going on, the chief knew what was going on. Okay?
Right.
That reporter tried to make a story because that reporter was told to get out of the way.
So...
That our officers didn't have time to stand there and run their mouth to a reporter.
Well, no, and I wouldn't expect the officers to, but I would expect to have a face there, a leadership face to say, we have no comment, we're investigating, and information will be released.
We're not going to run out in front of the TV. I'll
Well,
tell you that
no,
right now.
I'm not saying
We're not
we're
going to show
running
up
out.
just to play in front of the TV. If the TV contacts us and we're available, we will speak to it, and we do it all the time. Chief does it all the time, I do it all the time.
But it's not about...
But I'm not going to run to a scene just to be on TV.
But
and
it's
talk
not for the TV, it's for the citizens that live in that area.
That's why we're talking about
That's-
getting something
right.
out on Crime Watch or Text My Gov or whatever have you. We're not going to play into the media, the media, the TV or radio or whatever have you. We're not going to play to them.
But I don't want to play into the media, I want to play
Well,
into
you're
the
telling
people.
me-
No, I want to play into the
Heather,
people that
you
live
told
there.
me you were upset because they made that statement.
Well, right,
And they
but...
made that statement that there was a wrong done, that the mayor and the chief were not there. The
But
mayor and the chief
because they made it
weren't
sound
going
like
to be
that's what the people that lived in the area said. If the people that lived in the area said those things, they obviously felt that, and even just seeing you would have, assured them that, hey, it's under control or whatever. That's all I'm saying, is it's not about the media, it's about the citizens that live in the area, the citizens' lives that are affected by what's happening in their neighborhood. That's all I'm saying, and I think we
You
need to
can't
do a
expect-
better job.
You can't expect that you will not have either me or the chief running to every incident being out in the front of it. You will not have that.
No, but when there's bullets flying and there's how many shots that were fired on that corner,
It was done.
I expect,
over with.
something.
Could I ask about the technology you were talking about at the last time we brought this up? You said that the officers would have to return to the office in order to utilize Text My Gov, but don't they have computers and things in the car?
Let me put it this way, Sharon. They would have to stop what they're doing on an active shooter incident investigation to sit down to write something up for people to read.
I understand
You can't
what you're
do
saying,
that.
but it only takes
You know-
a minute to let them know that there's a problem.
I can't tell you what was, I wish I could tell you, to explain to you, wish I could tell you what was going on at that time. That I can tell you, I can tell you this, it would have been impossible for any police officer, including the chief, to be able to do that at that time. It would have been impossible, because I know what was going on at that time, and for a period of time afterwards.
But wouldn't it still be prudent to warn people to seek shelter if they're out playing, or if they're outside, or parents to get the kids in? I mean, you could have a worse situation.
If it's necessary, it would have been done.
Okay.
Okay, that's what people don't understand. If it was necessary, it would have been done. It wasn't necessary, so it wasn't done. Don't cry wolf.
But homes and cars were hit, and that's what I'm just saying, that it seems to me that there was a limited danger.
Yeah, it's necessary until it's not.
Right, and it wasn't necessary.
But it was.
No.
Yes, bullets flew. So at that point, it's a state of panic. Until they're told, don't worry about
There
it,
is no more threat.
then
They're
it's
going to
still
panic.
But what happened was, the media got there and the crowds got there before, while an active investigation was going on that didn't allow that to happen.
Listen, I agree. I don't want officers stopping to do something else. I agree with that 100%. And I come from a position that we need to look at something else, because what we have is broken.
Well, let us work on it, okay?
No,
As you
I
said,
don't think let us work on it is the answer.
well, put it this way, we're gonna take care of it.
2 weeks
Period.
ago, we were going to work on it, and still nothing, discussions haven't happened.
Well, it's not gonna be a
That's not
week.
true. We did have discussions. We had a meeting already on it.
Right. Anyone else on the PR firm?
Back to the PR firm, the one thing that remains to be said. I believe that if we wanted to put a commercial together or something like, I see Lynn's commercial and so on.
Right.
I'm all in favor of it.
Right, but,
It
yeah,
has to be professional.
But Lidditz does not have a PR firm, because I called them and asked. I checked with a couple other.
So then ours should be better then, because we're not. But my point is,
Utilizing them.
no, I'm just saying, that something like that I could see hiring a PR firm for.
Yeah.
But for daily or weekly or shots fired incidences, I don't think a PR firm's necessary.
So, on the one incident when we called Gavin back in, the chief and I made that decision to do that. It wasn't because it was an active threat per se, it was because there was miscommunication going out through social media networks, and we were trying to determine how far and fast that misinformation is being spread. And we don't have the technology to do that. So that's why a firm like that, on an as-needed basis, called in, even if it's time and materials, to say, hey, listen, we right now have this incident. Can you work with us to track and make sure that we don't have a fire that we don't know about that we have to put out? That's why we called them in. And I felt like their services were valuable to us and all that was going on, because we learned a lot of information about how far and wide that information spread. That we don't have the technology to do that. That's specialized software that can do that. So if we can have someone that, if and when those situations happen, we can call someone who can do that for us, that would be very helpful.
But
unfortunately, in that situation, there were other things, there were other issues, internal communication issues, that were causing some of that issue.
Sure.
So let's go back to the incident then. Not that particular incident, but an incident. The best way to steer off rumors and accusations and anything else is to be out in front.
Yep.
Correct.
So once your facts are out there, they can dispute, they can make things up, but the fact's the fact, it's out there.
Right.
So that's what I think like, we're trying to say. I don't care how many people said something that wasn't true and how far out that non-truth went. We're not gonna be able to change that if we hire a firm, or if we buy Twitter. Like, we're not gonna change it.
It's X now, by the way.
It's X now.
I refuse. But if we get out in front of it, that's where we have control.
Right.
So that's what we're saying.
Oh, I'm not arguing that point at all. I think communication is absolutely vital in today's world, and not communicating sometimes can raise more concerns and fears than a simple communication.
absolutely
That's all
does.
we're looking at right now, is how and when and in what process we get this basic, simple information to the key people who need to know it.
Lack of communication breeds mistrust.
This is where, I think you made a good point, Heather, that if we set up like just a simple set of guidelines that says like, when we have information of an incident of a certain level, like whatever the guideline is specifying, that we then acknowledge it publicly. And that it's not on only if people are talking about this online basis. Right. And then it's not based upon someone's judgment in the moment, but rather a set of guidelines that we decide, this is our PR guidelines. Right. And I completely agree that we have the people in place already who are able to do that.
We absolutely do.
Well, hold on a second. I'm talking about faces. So a major incident happens. Sure, I want to see the chief or the mayor or Mark, because they're the faces of the borough. But I don't necessarily think that you can expect the chief, the mayor, and Mark, and 6 other people to constantly fish out information.
No.
That's because there could be a chance when it's a Sunday, to go around the area, whatever, okay? So I think the borough has to seriously look. I'm gonna say it. There was a time when the police department had somebody there 24 hours a day. They answered doors, calls, whatever, okay? We eliminated that for a budget reduction, whatever I assume, okay? But that person would be vital. If that person does not get involved with the calls, they hear the radio calls, they hear the information. If the chief has a script that they just publish out, hey, shots fired, stay indoors in this section of town for this period of time, whatever. Keep it simple, but keep the message out. It's done. Plus, I really believe there should be somebody over there 24 hours a day. I think that hurts Columbia's communication, because a lot of stuff happens after they're done for the shows. And we don't have access to the police 24 hours. We do it at home technically, so I'm not saying you don't. But I've always appreciated Ben Preston. But, it's just over there. So, I think that's something we all look at and really consider, especially when it's coming up. I think that'd be a key person. And that person could actually, because I'm sure you guys get all the ambulance calls, you get all the fire calls. So any type of emergency call, that person would hear and have access to.
The mayor and I just talked about something similar, very much so.
So I didn't really want to talk about it tonight. I do think that with the budgets coming up, we'll associate look at that. But that I think is the key. That's the one. Now obviously if something's major, in time, either the chief or the mayor or, Mark gets out, then comes in. They're all yourself.
No, or I text him, hey, Ridge Avenue's on fire again. Just an FYI, Ridge Avenue's on fire. I live Dairy Queen.
No, but I just, we have our 3 main faces. I mean, that's who we want representing us to the public, but they can't be around all the time to get out information. So I think we have to look at other avenues.
Heather,
And yes,
so in what I heard, what's the bottom line here? So if this same scenario is happening right now, what is going to be done different than what happened then? Did we tell them, wait a week till we do our investigation, we'll give you something,
at this point, there is no bottom line right now because it's still in discussion. Correct?
I think it's been addressed.
It's being addressed.
Yeah, there is no solution right now, Frank, it's just being addressed.
Mhm.
And we're staying on top of it, that they're obviously working on it. So, I hope, hopefully, surely, we can give an answer,
Right.
but I don't think we have an answer right now.
No.
I know I heard a bunch of different stories.
Mhm.
I think I learned more here tonight than what I heard of all that put together. I wasn't near the area, I heard things about the market house, but they shut that down and everybody was so confused. Somebody could have had something. Just my theory.
Mhm. All right, anything else on the, what,
Brad.
Brad?
Brad Chambers, 304 Cherry Street. So I just wanted to say that I agree with Councilperson Zink and Kaufman and President Zink, sorry, and Councilperson Liddick. So I live on 304 Cherry Street, and I missed that by probably about like 30 minutes because I had to go to the airport. So I was outside. I could have been there. And I'm sure that Chief Bromer and Mayor Lutz are actively looking into this, but I don't know if you understand that the optics, and respectfully, I'm not saying that this is what you're doing, but the optics are that you're either A, incompetent, or B, you don't really care, because you don't live down here. So I don't know how long it takes to send out a text. Like you could tweet, you could send out a Facebook message, you could do an Instagram, you could do all of them at the same time. I don't know if you're aware of that, but I mean, how long does that take? Like, could you do it 30 minutes after it happened? Could you do it an hour? Could you do it 2 hours after it happened? Maybe 3 hours? Like, what am I supposed to believe the issue is?
I don't think it's fair to pass that judgment on the two. The practice has been, do your job, and as the chief would tell you, the officers that were on duty were working the investigation.
I'm not saying that they weren't working. I'm just saying that misconceptions can be formed.
So, this is where we're at right now, though. This is the discussion we're having. We don't have, as a borough, a plan in place to do the rapid communication. So, I'm not faulting anybody, because that's the way it's always been.
Right.
What we're saying is, we recognize that issue that you're talking about at 3rd and Cherry was a problem. And
we need to come up with a better solution.
with the technology we have available to us today, we need to look to create a plan to be able to use that technology.
Well, I'm not here to repudiate anyone, so if it sounded like I'm here to, like, throw blame.
To say that they don't.
It did, and I take issue with that. Let me tell you something, young man. I was born and raised downtown. My mom still lives downtown. I care about everybody in this community, and I will get the information out as soon as we possibly can.
What is soon to you?
There are things that factor into everyone. There is not a one size fits all in this issue.
What is soon
There's
to
so
you?
much difference. But don't come around and tell me or insinuate that I don't care about what happens downtown. You ain't been around here long enough to know how I care about this community.
Well, that is your opinion, and I do appreciate that, but you said you're working on it.
Your opinion.
You said you're working on it, and the fact that it hasn't been resolved, I do think it does appear to be an issue. And as I said before, you're welcome to feel how you feel, but I'm not casting blame, but like there seems to be a problem with why this hasn't been resolved. So, if this happens tomorrow and somebody lights the block up again, what's the solution?
Brad, we'll have you.
Okay, thank you.
And we do care. Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Any other comments on the PR firm? Do we want to bring this up again when Todd's here, or?
Sure.
I think, or have we beaten it enough?
Well, I'll sit down with Todd, let him know what was discussed here, advise him to maybe go back and listen to this portion of the meeting and hear. But at this point, I don't think we need to bring it up again unless he feels the need to.
All right, well, you'll work with him. If it needs to come up again, you'll put it on an agenda. The next couple items should be pretty quick. If we get hung up on any, we'll just move the remaining to another meeting. We have a draft ordinance amending Chapter 186 to add a new section related to regulations and enforcement for sidewalk cafes. We had put this in place temporarily during COVID. Remember, we did that, and that's now expired. So we want to make it a permanent part of the code. So that's what this is. Has everyone read through it? Is there any questions or comments or concerns with it?
I have a concern with, I didn't really dig into this, okay? But reading it, I see where, when it comes down to alcoholic consumption, that you're going to basically do away with the open container in those areas, open container at all, as long as you're following Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board and Columbia Borough ordinances. I think there should be a little more, I don't want to say it, a little more control over when and how alcoholic beverages are dispensed or consumed on sidewalk cafes. I think it comes down to, because
Well, I mean, they
I
have
get
to be
here's
seated.
the vision I have. I got a sidewalk cafe, there's a railing there, okay? I got people sitting there, and I got them handing open containers to people walking by.
Yeah, no, they can't.
Then that person is in violation.
Then that person-
I know that person's in violation,
Yeah.
but we don't have people that can stand there and watch that all the time.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm talking about?
So
Right,
what
but
would
there's
you-
no difference than, I mean,
Yeah.
in my mind, that's no difference than we can't watch every stop sign in the borough either.
But why allow something because you think something else doesn't work? Why keep
No.
going down the hole?
I don't think, we don't think it doesn't work. I think what we're trying to do.
I know what you're trying to do, I'm
Is
just
be
saying,
a little more
I have a little
accommodating.
concern that there needs to be some more thought about it.
But my thing is like, it has in here already that, you know, the sidewalk cafe permit will get revoked if they violate anything, so.
That's after the fact, that's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
I'm looking at prevention, not,
So what would you propose doing then, Mayor? Because they already have to have a
Yeah,
barrier.
okay.
What would you?
I didn't think a whole lot about it, but let me say this. What if there was no container, in other words, no can or bottle? It was all glass. I can hand a can off real easy.
Did we see this?
And I've seen this, I've been around, okay?
Yeah.
I've seen cans get stuck in pockets and people walking, leaving, and then walking down the street and they pop the top. I don't want to see that in Columbia.
Do we already see it with Union Station? Because it could happen there.
They're on a little more control, it's a little larger, a little more controlled. It's not 4 foot of an 8 foot sidewalk.
What about Kettleworks?
I'm saying, I'm concerned about some of that. I'm just saying, I have a concern.
I mean, that's where I'm asking. I mean, we've been allowing this now for several years.
To what extent, though?
Is there an issue?
That's what I'm saying, to what extent?
Pretty much to everything.
I'll tell you,
that's in
we
this
had
ordinance.
issues. We had issues.
Well, that's what we need to know.
And I'm not gonna bring up the issues, okay? Because I don't want to throw any business under the bus. We have had issues.
Recently? Is that a recent
No,
thing?
until they got the message that it
Okay.
wasn't gonna happen.
Well,
So, I mean, I can tell you this, I'm very much in for in favor of allowing this, because one of the things that I believe we're trying to do here in Columbia is to create that feel or vibe of, there's an active place to come and enjoy, especially in the evenings, things going on. I would say, Mayor, if we discover that these things are causing those types of problems, then we address it when they come up. But I don't see that currently happening now, and the places where the permits are being approved are, in my opinion, trying to be as responsible as they can. So I think the onus is on us on how we approve these.
I'm playing devil's advocate.
Sure. Fair enough. It's a good discussion, but
Because I want you to really think, about what you're doing, and are we going to be able to control it? Don't come back in 6 months and say, Chief Brummer, you didn't have guys walking on the street, people were walking around with beer. I don't want to hear it.
If a problem rises up, I think we'll have to address it, but I haven't seen it being a problem currently, and I think the vendors that are currently doing this have been responsible. The other thing is, the Sidewalk Cafe would apply to Home Goodies. It's just tables outside on the sidewalk. It's not only places that serve alcohol.
No, and I'm concerned, I wasn't concerned about anything other than the consumption or, of alcoholic beverages.
Well, and the reality is, if there's an issue with the alcoholic beverages, they're gonna lose their liquor license too.
Exactly. There's a lot
There's a
larger
lot
things.
more at stake.
Yeah.
Well, that don't happen so easy,
Then,
what you think.
Now, if I'm walking down the street and someone slips me a bagel sandwich from Home Goodies, I'm not gonna say a word.
Yeah, I know, right?
I'm gonna try to keep going.
Give me all the bagels.
No, I just want you to think about that, and truthfully, we have had some issues, we have gotten on those people very hard, and they're either not in business anymore, or they've learned.
Right.
Well, right. I mean,
But I just wanted you to, like I said, play devil's advocate, that just be careful. I don't want to see it turn into something that we can't
Unintended
handle.
consequences,
Yeah.
right.
Mary?
I think the amount will probably be the best thing for us. The amount of establishments that are going to be able to do that are probably going to be the best things for us.
Right.
There'll only be several.
Few of them,
Yeah.
Hi, Heather.
Yeah.
Just a few comments. We reviewed a draft of this ordinance at our July 18th Planning Commission meeting. And I was really surprised to see that it kind of went from 8 pages to 4. The exhibit, the attachment A, under section 2, item 4, it says it shall not be enclosed by fixed walls.
And that's what I was gonna.
And then when you get to
Section 7.
G, section 7, it says they may be permanently enclosed by fixed walls. That was one comment here. It's kind of contradictory there. It's under design standards for sidewalk cafe. It says you can use enclosed fixed walls, yet under definitions, it says not.
Yeah, thanks, Mary.
Okay. Under F, section 6, consideration of application and issuance of permit. Number 5, you have 15 spelled out and then 10 in parentheses.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Oh, I missed that one.
And I just need to make, will the, in the original one we reviewed on the 18th of July, the whole harmless release form was part of it. Will that be an additional attachment to
It'll
this?
be part of the application, just not part of the ordinance, so we just pulled it out, yep.
Okay. Just a comment. At Planning Commission, we had quite the discussion about the fact that being seated, what about stand-up tables? Are they not going to be allowed to use stand-up tables? I'll tell you, we had quite the discussion about that at Planning Commission.
That's one thing that I can tell you I've seen in other municipalities. In a lot of places, what they do is their barriers are actually a standing height table, I don't know, 42-inch table or whatever.
Like a bar.
A bar, exactly, and they use that as kind of the barrier area, so that way people could put their drinks on. That was one thing when I read the ordinance, I thought, I don't know if that's, I understand why, but that's one thing that definitely struck me as a little odd.
So those were just some comments I wanted to make. Sitting down today and comparing 8 pages to 4 pages, and,
Thinking about the stand-up table, I think that,
Okay,
that would, I think, allow for overcrowding, whereas here you have them required to be seated, and the capacity for that section can only be the number of seats you have, whereas stand-up would allow for overcrowding, which would be an issue, I believe.
And that's certainly, the mayor's point, right?
Right.
Having those stand-up tables makes it a lot easier to slip a beer across the table.
Exactly.
Go on, yeah.
Exactly,
Sure.
that's kind of what I'm thinking.
What I can tell you is, in downtown New York, around our office, there are 4 or 5 places that have those tables. I have never once seen somebody with an open container somewhere they shouldn't. I'm not saying those problems don't exist, but,
Evan, are you saying seated tables or the stand?
the stand-up, in fact, the one bar that I'm thinking of has a large outdoor area, and then on half of the sidewalk, they have stand-up tables that kind of go above planters, and that's where everybody stands along that area, right along the sidewalk. Now, they shut down that portion of the street a lot on Friday, Saturday nights during the summer, so you can have open containers anywhere in that street, but it doesn't normally seem to be a problem.
All right, I had a few other things that I had given to Evan earlier to make changes on. Did anyone else have any other things that they noticed was weird? Yes, Frank.
Am I correct, the right-of-way goes to the face of the building?
Not necessarily,
Not necessarily, no.
How do they know that when they come to get a permit?
They have to show on the plan, they have to give us a diagram, they have to show us where the right-of-way line is, and if the sidewalk is wider, then this portion is private, this part is public. They have to show us all that. That's all, the onus is on them to provide us that information.
Would you say in most cases, the right-of-way does go to the front of the building or not?
Not necessarily, no.
So what happens if they come get a permit to put that sidewalk cafe in there? They happen to get, I'm just going to use homeless, I don't know why. They decide just not even to go in the bar and buy anything, go there, sit down, maybe get out some checkers or do what they got to do. How can you actually tell these people to go if the people there that have the bar don't own that sidewalk? If that's part of the boroughs, how can they say, hey, get out of here, this is for our customers?
If it's part of an approved sidewalk cafe permit, that we have a diagram and they're following the diagram and they've put everything in per the plan, that's an extension of that facility outside, and they have the right to regulate it. That's the whole purpose, right, of actually doing this. It gives them the ability to say, our business is spilling out onto the sidewalk 5 feet from the front facade, therefore this is now a sidewalk cafe permitted use. And we also then, and most cities do this, I think, they require a barrier, a physical, visible line to say, you have to be within this space to be there.
Yeah, it seems like we're kind of missing the boat if we're giving them a permit to do that, whatever. They're getting away with not paying taxes on that. If you could somehow put that to their deed and say, okay, you're going to use this and that's what it's going to be, it's part of your property, you should be taxed for it. Just why?
We get a permit fee from it.
Is that a one-time permit fee?
Yeah, I don't know if we want to go down the road of charging them an annual usage fee for use on the sidewalk. I think the benefit of seeing an energized downtown and people outside is a plus.
And that's the value that these bring to the community, because
And not only that, they're responsible to maintain the sidewalk anyway.
right,
So,
that's true.
you know, I mean, in the winter, they have to shovel it and everything, they have to take care of it. If there's issues with the sidewalk, they have to fix it per the code. So why shouldn't they be allowed to
I'm
use it
the
as an
same
extension of
way.
their building?
My home, I'll get that quick ticket if I don't shovel that pavement or whatever.
Well, right,
I
they
gotta
will
do that
too.
too.
They will too, so why should they have to pay extra taxes to use something that they're maintaining anyway?
Yeah, I ain't sure that I'm taxed for my sidewalk, but I'm just telling you, that's things that I gotta do too. It's just something to look at, that's all.
You know, that's a good comment. Are these outdoor dining areas going to be permanent, or are they going to be dismantled in the winter? What are they doing?
I would say, well, it depends on the establishment, to be honest with you.
Kettle Works is a raised platform, that one's gonna be permanent year-round. If they're just putting tables out with movable barriers, in the wintertime, they could be removed. So I think it's a case-by-case basis.
Because my thoughts were, Frank was talking about cleaning the sidewalk and all. You're taking some space away from the sidewalk, and with a decent snow, is that going to impede, you know, the snow getting taken from the gutter up onto this part of the sidewalk, the curbing? Is that going to create just a narrow path for people to travel through?
It shouldn't, because they're still bound by the code
still-
of how much you have to shovel, how much you have to clear.
You have to
Like
maintain
how
a
many
path
feet.
within 24
Yeah.
hours after a snow stop, so.
You don't have to clear the whole entire thing.
No.
That's what I'm saying. But when you're taking some away, now you're squeezing it down a little bit.
Yeah.
But you still have to.
But
you
these
still have-
sidewalk cafes can only be in areas where the sidewalk is, I'll say, widened. You still have to have a 4-foot area, and I know it may get squeezed down a little bit, but you still
Like
gotta
8
have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. If you're used to an 8-foot sidewalk,
Yeah.
and it snows and you've got plenty of room to get by,
Yeah.
get around, and now you're cut down to a 4-foot sidewalk,
Then they gotta clear the whole 4
And then
foot.
you gotta, yeah.
but where are they gonna clear it to?
The street.
And then Jake will come through with the plow it up.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It would be nice if it, and I imagine some will leave tables and chairs sit out.
No, I can tell you a lot of places don't. They've set up like kind of like ballards and ropes, and then in the winter,
That's
once it
what I
gets
was
too
thinking.
cold that people don't want to get, you know, we're not in
They'll pick that up
Atlanta or
and do that
Florida or
inside.
something,
Yeah.
yeah, yep.
I hope it works, I really do,
Yeah.
because I would love to sit outside.
Any other comments on the sidewalk cafe? At this point, Evan, can you make
We'll get those changes.
those changes made, and then can we bring it back next
We,
Tuesday?
That's the goal, is to bring it back next Tuesday with authorization to advertise.
For authorization to advertise?
yep,
Okay.
yep.
All right, D, sample ordinance related to nuisances. This, we just wanted to introduce. This is not ready to come back to us yet.
Yeah.
This is something that I've been talking to Evan about. We were talking before this meeting even about how this would relate to our current quick ticket ordinance, and it seemed to be there was some conflict there, so I think we still have some work to do on this
Yeah,
one.
absolutely.
Does anyone have any comments, questions, or concerns on this one, or anything that they?
Is this separate from like a noise ordinance? Because I didn't look up the difference.
There are noise provisions in this ordinance.
Okay.
That does not mean that you can't have a separate noise ordinance that gets a little bit more specific than what is in here. That, I see that quite a bit. And in fact, actually, the municipality that this one kind of came from has a separate noise ordinance as well.
Thank you.
One of the questions that I had, and I'd be interested in hearing others' comments on this one as well. because I told Mark I was bringing this up. In the section about motor vehicles, is it motor? No, it's H. The skateboards and roller skates. It actually says in there, can't use them in the parks. And I kind of feel like our parks are for recreating, so why are, I don't really think we should be saying you can't use recreational things in the area we're designated for recreation. Because then we're saying you can't have them on the sidewalk, you can't have them on the street, can't have them here, can't have them there. So
Where can you do it?
where can we do it?
Yeah.
And to me, that just, I didn't agree with that. So I'd be interested to hear if anyone else has thoughts on that.
Well, I'll just echo you, I think that's the place they should be using them.
Exactly.
You know,
And
to go out there and
so
play and
that
have
was
fun.
one of those things that I would have liked to have seen removed.
The current ordinance regarding those states that if you're going down the sidewalk on a scooter and there's a pedestrian approaching you, you're supposed to stop and get off your scooter till you're by them and get back on and go. I would think that you may want to look at that same protocol and allow, I agree, for your parks.
Yeah, I think it is in there that pedestrians always have the right of way as opposed to, you know, scooters and skateboards and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I mean, with that, I think you should allow in the park and things.
Yeah, because it currently says prohibited locations, it shall be unlawful to operate any vehicle, including but not limited to motor vehicles, motorcycles, and skateboards, rollerblades, kick scooters, or upon any sidewalk or any park grounds, tennis courts or recreational fields owned or operated by the borough within the borough.
I can understand the motorized.
Right, I can
But I
too.
don't understand the non-motorized.
Right, I don't either.
And I was just looking at your current ordinance, and I actually really like, because my concern with being in the park is people using their rollerblades and skateboards on benches, tables, those kind of things. And I like the language that's in your current ordinance that says you can't use any of those things on anything that's not intended to be for pedestrian foot traffic. So it lists, you know, bench, chair, flower box, retaining wall. So that kind of prevents, if you allow it in the park, having that restriction in there kind of allows you to enforce it if somebody is, you know,
Yeah,
using.
that was due to, and I remember the discussion at the time, Mary, you might remember too, guys on skateboard railing.
Yep.
My kids, I never skateboarded, but my kids did. I know what they're talking about when they say that. You jump on the edge of the bench,
Yeah.
go down on the side of it.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you got a tore up seat and steps.
Yeah.
The other thing I like about this is that it does include a catch-all at the end for pretty much anything that we may or may not have thought of right now. If, you know, it gives us the ability to say that's a nuisance because it is creating a public health hazard or, you know, in these sorts of things, so that if it's not expressly written, we still are able to have codes say it's a nuisance, it needs taken care of.
And this is not a static document, right? If in 5 years from now, something new pops up, and God knows there's all kinds of new things coming up all the time, and you want to say, this is really bad, and it's not, you know, then, you know, just as an example, I want to see if it's in here or not. Where is it? But like, some of my municipalities have added ATVs, dirt bikes, utility vehicles that have become such an issue on roadways in some cases. They've added that, you know, as a nuisance, because it makes it a little easier to enforce sometimes when, you know, as hard as those people are to catch when they're doing that.
I know another one that has raised concerns in some other communities is the recreational use of drones. It's fun to take it out and fly, but with drones and cameras and everything, people often feel like they could be using them for inappropriate reasons. So I think there's regulations on how and when drones can be flown in those areas, et cetera.
I thought that was in our drone ordinance where, but still, that being covered as a nuisance.
As a nuisance, just, yeah, anywhere in town, you're flying it over people's houses and across their backyards, it could be a problem.
It can be scary.
Yep.
Motorized bicycles addressed? Did I miss that?
Oh, yeah, that was one, I forgot to write that on my
Yeah.
list.
That,
I wanted to make sure that we called that out specifically.
Yeah.
That would go under like the motor
Mhm.
vehicles. That'd be where, like, with the motorized
scooters, exactly, so that may be an additional thing to add to that list that is already there, yeah. That's a great example of something new that has kind of popped up and has quickly become an issue in some cases.
Has anyone else read through this? Does anyone have any questions on the nuisance ordinance? Anything that you would like to see changed or whatever? Evan, if we can
Make some of those changes.
make some of those changes that we talked about, and we'll bring this back. We're not ready to vote to advertise this one yet, because I still think there's too many things that we need to kick around on this.
There's a number of things in your ordinances currently that we're gonna have to look at.
Resolve.
Because it's kind of scattered through, one of the points of this was to get this all in one place, call out these things as nuisances, so if you need to go in and abate them, rather than just sending people endless letters and fines and not getting anything done, you can do that, but it's kind of, some of that stuff is scattered throughout your current code, so we wanna take all of that out and then consolidate it into one ordinance that's, yeah, yep.
All right. If everyone wants to take a few minutes and read through it again, see if there's anything that you had questions or comments on, we can let Evan know.
By all means, yep.
Incorporate those changes into the next read of that. And finally, we have a draft ordinance to amend Chapter 207 to update regulations related to handicap parking. This is pretty straightforward. It basically is the change that we requested to allow a designation of a handicap parking space for the person that
Pay for it.
that paid for it. I believe this is pretty much ready to go and could come back next week for authorization to advertise unless someone has questions, comments.
One thing I wanted to ask you is in the law that changed this, it's kind of the list of things there that allows you to designate a specific vehicle, license plate, or some other category. Would you like me to add handicap placard number to that list specifically? I mean, I think it's covered by the other category, but I think that's kind of where you're going. It makes a lot of sense to do.
Yes, that is where we're going.
So, and that's, I think it easily fits within what's in the law, and we can just add it specifically so there's no question in the future. Okay.
So my biggest concern is before we start giving people free parking spots, that it's enforced. And not the enforcement of that actual handicap spot, but that it's enforced and regulated properly, that those who have handicap actually require handicap parking.
I think that is where you're relying, I said this to Mark and Heather earlier, really relying on the state to have done their homework. You're saying because the state's the one that issues a handicap parking placard, right?
The placard.
Yes.
And the plate.
And the plate, yeah.
Anybody can apply for handicap parking.
Well, anyone can apply, but we review the permit for a handicap parking space based on their qualifications.
Yeah, you're not going to, I hate to say this, you're, under the criteria that's in your ordinances, if you don't have a handicap placard, I don't think you're getting a handicap parking space. And it should,
We're sure about this.
But Evan, shouldn't it be handicap placard and plate?
You don't have to have both.
It's usually one or the other.
Yeah.
That's what the state issues. And I think that the concern is to make sure that the designated space out in front of a house in a residential zone is truly needed by that person who lives in that house.
Well, what I'm saying is placards can be given to different people, trades can't.
Right, but placards are issued by the state, and that would still allow that person to legally park in a designated handicap parking space.
The placard would be for, say, the caregiver that has a disabled child. That disabled child is not going to be able to get the plate because they obviously can't title the vehicle, but they're going to have a placard because their caretaker needs a space to get them in and out of the house, or a caregiver for an elderly parent to get them in and out of the house. So that you're going to have that placard that may go from car to car.
Yeah.
I get shivers when I think how many more handicap spots we're going to have.
Yeah.
I honestly don't think we're going to get any more than we already get, just because they can reserve for themselves. It's
We have a lot of people over the years that have come in here for handicap parking and were turned down because they didn't own a car. And now you're saying they won't be turned down.
I'm saying they won't be automatically turned down just because of that. I think we have to look at all the factors around it, and if we feel like it's verified and justified, it can be approved.
That's too great of me. I'm sorry,
If you pass this, I'm going to get one. For my mom too.
Well, with the example you gave makes sense, because if someone has a handicapped child that's never going to be able to get a driver's license, why in the world wouldn't you give them a space in front of their home to take that child around? I mean, that just doesn't even make sense. Why? I think it would have to be a case-by-case basis.
And see, Sharon, you're absolutely right. I agree with you 100%. I remember that exact discussion in this room. And the comment was, if the doctor signed the papers and they got a placard, we got to give them one. So automatically, we gave out handicap parking spaces by the numbers. Whether the person actually, and it was actually set up to be, you had to review it to see if they really needed it or not.
But wouldn't you set the borough up for liability if you didn't give it and something happened?
I agree with you 100%, because we had that issue with the young gal up on Ridge Avenue.
You have to go Walnut Street too.
And what we did was we put up temporary signs in buckets of concrete to get around it. But I agree with you. If you have a severely handicapped child who will never ever be able to drive, and you need that, I agree they should have a spot. But what you'll have is what we had was a lot of people trying to get handicap parking spots, and they couldn't because they didn't drive, or they didn't own a car. Their spouse or their significant other owned the car and was not handicapped. And that's what I'm saying. You're liable to get all those people who were not permitted now getting a handicap spot.
I guess my question, maybe it's a policy decision, but is that a bad thing?
I'm not saying it's a bad thing, Evan. I'm just saying, right now, we have streets.
I understand parking is an issue, yeah.
Half the available parking is handicap parking. Is it necessary?
But I don't think this ordinance is changing any of the operational stuff. All it's doing is saying that if you have a handicap placard, and if you get a handicap space, you can park. You can say that your space, only you can park in that space.
Exactly, that's where I have a problem. Until we can have a black and white policy that can be enforced, I'm not in favor of individually giving one person their own parking space. It's not-
But isn't this the policy we're looking for to
Mhm.
enforce that?
So, if we don't want to allow an individual who is disabled to park in front of their house, then get rid of the whole policy. And I mean it honestly, if this is creating a problem, and we are a community that many of our homes depend on on-street parking. I can tell you, there have been there have been cases where permits have come in, and we realized that they have off-street parking available, it's just something that they didn't want to choose to use. So we didn't accept the permit, and we made them park in the back. You know, they have off-street parking available, it may not be the perfect thing for them, so we've denied it.
We had that complaint.
Right.
We had that exact complaint in here. People come in here and said, my neighbor has a handicap spot out front, doesn't use it, they park in the back. So that friends who come can park in that handicap spot.
Right. So
Is that right, Frank?
Well, how often is that situation really happening now?
A couple.
Parking's a premium in
I-
Columbia, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
You gotta be careful.
It is gold.
I like this one because one of the complaints we get is a person who gets a permit has to pay for it, and then has to pay the annual fee to maintain it. Because of the way we have it set up right now, anybody with a handicap plate or placard can park in a spot that they paid for. And that's where I have a problem.
Yes, because that woman in particular who contacted me about this originally has oxygen and did not always get to park in her spot because another person with a handicap placard would take it. How is she supposed to carry groceries, oxygen, and all to get to her house if she has to park several spots away? I understand what she's saying, and I agree with it. I mean, you
Absolutely.
really...
Did we say that's why the placard number has to match the?
Correct. That's the whole point of
That's
this,
the whole point of
is
this
to.
amendment, is to add that feature to this code
Yeah.
section.
But
to say
prior to this.
anyone with a handicap.
Prior to this, yeah, anyone with a handicap placard, but prior to this, you couldn't get the sign unless you were handicapped and owned the vehicle.
And that's probably generally going to be
And that's
the
still
case,
gonna,
I would think.
that's
most
still
of
gonna
the
stay.
time.
No, it won't.
Well,
Yeah, this doesn't
You
change that at all.
didn't include the vehicle.
Yeah,
think it
the
says-
plate and or any other approved plate or placard.
Yeah, what's in the law,
But you put that door in there.
a specific vehicle, a specific license plate, or other category of designation. That's what is in the
So I'm
law.
saying you got an and or in there,
Right.
which
You want it to be
allows me to
plate
get a
only.
placard,
Can
but
I-
not a plate.
Can I ask another stupid
Yeah.
question? What happens when somebody parks in my spot and I call the police department?
They get ticketed.
With this, they can be ticketed now.
If they don't have a placard.
And no too.
I'm not telling cars.
That's what you do.
Yep.
If the sign is there.
That's federal.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you don't, I will say this, we have this in a lot of our municipalities. I can't say that I have seen a large pattern of abuse because of that specific, like, you don't wanna mess with handicap parking regulations. You just don't, I can tell you that. The federal law is real specific on it, and it's not a good idea, and most people at least recognize that. I'm not saying that there won't be some abuse, because you can't always prevent that, but I have not seen rampant abuse of this.
I think it's good. I think you gotta push it through.
So we're not voting tonight.
no, we're not voting tonight.
No,
And we have to
I think
advertise
you gotta-
before we
that's what I
vote
mean.
anyway. Yes.
For what it's worth, I printed this out of E-codes today. It's the handicap parking and section 20791, renewal space termination appeals, number C there. If you want to appeal, all such appeals shall be heard by the Public Safety Committee at its next regularly scheduled meeting. Has that been taken out?
There are
I printed this off today.
10 trillion references to committees in the committee structure that was never scrubbed from the code, so no.
If you're making a
We
change
can-
here,
We can
make
certainly
that
do that.
change also.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
That's
Yeah.
where I'm coming from.
Oh, no, that's good, Mary, yeah, I mean, they did put the change in that says anywhere that a committee is referenced, it then goes to Borough Council,
Yeah.
but
I'm
as we're
just thinking
scrubbing,
you're doing this.
you're right,
Mhm.
yep.
Where is that one, Mary? What section is it?
Is the current 90 what?
207, 91C.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, let's scrub that out as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Frank?
Can't you put a whole, one thing in that takes care of all?
Could, yeah, I think that's kind of what they've
They
done. They
did,
tried to, but we could.
It still creates confusion.
it
'cause of
still
the-
creates confusion.
Thank you.
Yeah, I heard Mark touched on what I want to talk about. I know back in the 90s, I was on the safety committee, me, Norm, and somebody else, and we had meetings like this, just like you're having now. My understanding is, and according to what I heard Mark say, the way it is right now, anyone can park in that space if they have a handicap license plate.
Right.
Now, you're changing that. You're giving that person, their person is owning that spot.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, let's call me, I don't quite agree with that. Don't ask me why, I know we really pursued that. And here, if that person may be handicapped, but they still have a job somewhere. Handicapped people work. Here's that place sitting all day long, or all night long, maybe they work night shift. That is just their spot, and I can't buy that. I'm sorry, I agree, if you have the placard or the handicap license plate, anybody should be allowed to park there. That's just I just don't agree with that. I didn't think I'd ever see that change. Now they own that spot.
But then, Frank, to play devil's advocate on that, if there's no other handicapped people on the block, that space is still going to be empty when they're at work or when they're not parked there.
Is there anything here that addresses that? How many spaces on the block? How many, it used to be somewhere.
That's part of that's
Review.
part of the operational review, so, yeah.
Okay, so they're gonna look at that. The other thing is, there is, and I heard Mark say that, a yearly fee. And there's also a fee when they put the sign in.
Yes.
And you know what that is?
The sign fee is $100, and I forget what the annual renewal is, don't quote me, I think it's 25, but it's
25?
somewhere in there.
About 50,
And
yeah.
when we get that, we actually verify, they have to sign a form that says, yes, this spot is still needed for the same people that applied initially. So we have them verify that it's still needed.
So what happens when that comes due? What department's in charge of that?
Public Works.
Public Works Department. Are they on top of it?
Yep.
Not that I want to handicap people, but it's just if we have the law, we gotta pursue it. But I just can't comprehend that. The other thing here is, it says, if a handicap parking space is approved pursuant to this chapter.
Right.
Explain that to me.
The chapter where this regulation
It was
falls
done
in,
before this.
It's already in there in 207, all the handicap parking regulations. This is in addition to that 207. So all the regulations are already in the code. In that chapter, that's why I'm saying pursuant to this chapter, it's already in there.
Yeah, I just never thought I'd see that person owns that space. That's just my feelings.
It was not something that was available. They changed the law in 2019 specifically to allow this. The state legislature made a determination. So before that, you couldn't do this.
So is this, like, people who already have a space, could they apply to request that it's?
Absolutely, yep.
So it's sort of retroactive to people who
Yeah,
already.
absolutely. Anyone who needs one, whether they've had it in the past or not, is able to, absolutely.
Not just
Yeah. No, yeah.
Change it so that
Yeah.
they put their placard
Yeah.
on.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts, questions, comments, concerns? I'd like to bring it back to advertise, or to authorize to advertise next time. So you got another chance, Eric.
I mean, It's nuts. It's all nice and warm and fuzzy for them to do that. But, you know, like, what about, since Columbia Borough has a street sweeper they run 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, what about the handicapped people that when the street sweeper's coming by, they park on the other side of the street? As convenient as for them, and they don't care about anybody else. And they can park on the other side, and they can walk across the street to their house. That's not a consideration, you know, but tell somebody they lost a park in their parking spot, that's, oh, yeah, I don't buy it. I have a problem with it. I understand the need for handicap parking, I'm not saying it's not. I just don't think it's fair to say, this spot right here in front of your house is yours and all yours.
I agree. Heather, you said that this is being pursued or whatever, the amount of handicap spots allowed on that block. I didn't hear nothing talked about that.
So when we review an application, Frank, say we get an application for the 600 block of Locust Street.
4.
It's a 4, oh, no, this is at 6. I looked it up.
4 on 600.
We would send somebody out there, normally Jake goes out and he looks at where they are, how many are on that block, so we don't get a block that has 7, 8, 9 handicap spaces.
What happens if there is? What happens if you have a row home of handicapped people?
Well, yeah, then what does happen?
You tell Heather she can have one and I can't?
Well, yes, in a sense, yes.
But that's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Why? What have we done wrong?
How can you tell Heather, you can tell Joanne, Sharon, and Heather that they can have their personal private parking space in front of their house, but I can't.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Well, honestly, if we get to that stage, maybe the placard number comes off the sign and any handicapped person on that block of park. I don't know, we had to look at it if that ever
That
works.
just reverts back to.
But then,
That's why some
I would
municipalities
say
went
take
to
away the
permanent
fee,
parking.
then we post it, we
By the
pay
block.
for it, and there's no fee to the individuals who park there. Get rid of the registration and the fee.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
I say you put a handicapped parking spot at the top of the block and one at the bottom.
And if it's not needed, then you just lost 2 parking spaces.
Yeah, we're losing parking.
And if you live in the middle of the block, your ass out.
No, because you just told us if you have off-street parking and you have a 60-foot yard, or 60 feet of yard, whatever you want to say, that if they can off-street park, then I'm going to tell them to park out back.
Well, on a case-by-case basis, looking at the pathway, is there a pathway to get to the door?
I don't disagree, but that could be 60 yards where it could be 10 feet out front of their house.
Right.
It's not black and white.
It's not.
You're making things too easy to play favoritism. And I'm not saying you're playing favoritism to anybody because you don't know anybody in Columbia, neighbor-wise. But what I'm saying is it allows for errors, and I don't like it. And it should be black and white. It should be either you're qualified or you're not. And this, that, and everything. But we can't say, hey, on this block, we're only allowed 3. And on the Matter Street block, since it's longer, we're allowed 6. And, you 6 people were here first, so I'll accept yours, but sorry, Sharon, you're next. You used up all the spots. To me, it's just crazy. And I'm not.
We've never hit that. We did have a situation on Chestnut Street where 2 neighbors both one has an existing site, the attached house has requested one. We got some concerns from some of the neighbors that's gonna put too many on that street. We went out and looked at it and felt like, no, both houses fairly have met the requirement of a handicap parking, so we've issued 2 side by side.
One guy's dead.
I was just going to say, one's dead and the other one doesn't drive.
If it's no longer in the
I'm sorry.
That's part of it, is you've gotta,
That's what
you know,
they
when
want.
someone, when it's no longer needed, it
It has
goes
to go
away.
away.
But
Yeah.
there's no, all right.
So how long's he been dead?
A year and a half.
He's been dead since early spring.
Okay, well, it's not within the year yet.
I was gonna say, it's only, yeah.
So
And the other
again,
one, all they get is a big van that comes and picks them up, which doesn't fit in the handicap parking space because the person who drives the car doesn't live there.
If the person who drives the car doesn't live there, then that should be going away too.
so here's the next thing, and I agree with Evan said. We don't have a true system. We send out a renewal form. And it comes to me and says, Eric, your time for renewal is every 25 hours and confirm that you're still handicapped. Okay, send it back in. But when you initially do it, you have to get signatures from your neighbors.
No, we send notices to the neighbors, and they have the opportunity to send in whether they're concerned about it or not, but they don't have to approve it.
Both of my neighbors I had to approve, I had to sign off saying, yes, I do.
We don't require the neighbors to approve an individual's handicap. We just we give them the opportunity to issue a letter or a notice of concern.
Okay. I just.
Did you know?
By the same
I
token,
think you're a nice person. I don't disagree with the handicapped people.
You just get a little spicy sometimes.
I just want to make sure it's black and white. People.
yeah, by the same token, the neighbor can't park in his spot. He can't get a handicap sign in his spot, in front of his
My
house.
neighbor parks in my spot all the time. I don't care. I can use to walk a little bit.
You must have allowed it then for them to get that. Somebody had to.
No. My spot is public space. Their spot is privately owned. That's the difference. They own privately owned part of that street, I have a public street. So they can park their car here and they can park their car here. Eric only has a choice of parking here. If they're there, I gotta go somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm still waiting to know how many spaces you're gonna have in any one block.
There's no set number,
There's no
Frank.
set number.
Say that again?
There's no set number.
Well, why would you send Jake out to count the number of them on the street?
Because Jay gets bored. I want to give him something to do.
Oh, my God.
Jim likes to count.
Didn't think I'd get an answer like that.
Frank, we do our best to go out and look at the site and see if there's any additional concerns about the number of spaces out there. There's not a set number. There's not only 4 per block or so many per linear feet of street. That doesn't exist. We go out and evaluate, is there a safe place we can put a spot in front of the property? Is there ability to get it in? Are there too many driveways? Everything else. If it fits and it can be properly marked, then Jake looks at it, evaluates it, he signs it, sends it to me. I go over all the material and I sign it if appropriate. It's not a perfect system, but I just think it's a courtesy to people in the community who have a need.
Well,
I can't judge every doctor's note to say, well, the doctor signed it, but I think that person can walk more than 800 yards across their backyard, so they can just tough it out. We have to have some standard. It's not perfect, I get it, but I think it's at least creates an opportunity for people with disabilities to have that little bit of advantage to be able to park closer to their house. I really don't have a problem with it. I don't think it's been grossly abused either.
I agree with that. I don't think it's abused, at least not widely abused.
If someone would do properly.
Personally, I feel like we should be thankful we don't have to apply for a handicap space and allow those who do to do it. It just...
I think it's a courtesy to those who have needs, that's all.
Whatever you do isn't in stone. Do it and see what happens.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. All right, any final thoughts on the handicap? Can we bring that back next week to advertise? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not set in stone now. If we come back next week and someone has concerns, then we don't advertise and we go back to the drawing board. So, all right. Borough Council comments. Councilperson Stahl.
Nothing, thank you.
Councilperson Price.
Well, I had something. I'm saving it. Never mind.
Why? Go
It's
ahead.
getting too late.
No, it's okay. Go.
Well, it was about the question I asked about the live scan, I think it's called. You weren't here, Chief, the meeting I asked about a month ago, and Leo answered and said he would kind of get back to us. I just wanted to follow up to know why there's silhouettes on there instead of pictures. I thought we purchased the equipment to take the photos and fingerprinting, and I remember that was in the budget last fall. And I'm just curious, a lot of times, I'd say more often than not, I just see silhouettes.
It just depends on their crime.
Oh, okay,
We
okay.
don't take photos or do fingerprints for every.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I didn't understand that. Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Councilperson Kaufman?
To follow up with that, so when the shooting incident gets taken care of, we'll see a picture.
Yeah, once they're already blocked.
All right, there you go.
I assure you.
I don't have anything tonight.
Councilperson Fisher?
Just one quick thing. With the extreme temperatures, I know Jay Barningham's been sending stuff out. There's just concern to keep an eye on our neighbors. If you see anyone who needs help, there are some cooling centers that have been opened, places they get out of the heat for a while. So if you see someone who might possibly need it, have them get in touch with one of those locations.
Great. I just want to send a reminder that at this point we are ankle deep in budget season. By this time next month we'll be knee deep. Budget meetings are September 21st, October 19th, and November 16th, with the possibility of needing to use the November workshop on November 9th as well for a budget meeting. So keep that in mind and keep your eyes peeled for more information. Also, since we've hit September, everyone should start thinking about the board vacancy, the boards that you are liaisons for, who's coming up for appointment, reappointment, if you're going to have vacancies. Start thinking about reaching out to community members and asking them, start soliciting people that would like to serve. Get them to look for more information. Our website has information on different boards. Let's start doing that so we're not scrambling at the end of the year. Also, I wanted to let everyone know, today I sent emails to Columbia Borough and Lancaster Catholic asking if they have any students that may be interested in the Junior Councilperson program to get that restarted again. I think it's a valuable program and it does offer valuable skills and experiences for the students to take advantage of it, give them opportunities for something for college application and resume. But I figured Catholic High has kids that live in Columbia, so why not open it to them too? So I emailed both. I'll let anyone know if we hear back, but I think that's a valuable program worth pursuing. And finally, I have prepared something that I did want to read, and I apologize, but I think that this was important to be said. Columbia is in a unique situation where the municipal boundary and the school district boundary are the same. This requires a relationship between the Borough Council and the school board to discuss challenges and resolve differences. Past relationships have been beneficial and produced results. For example, the SRO. Unfortunately, Council has been unable to hold any productive public meetings with the current school board or administration. In fact, the Council meeting that was attended by multiple members of the school board saw behavior from those members that was unprofessional and unacceptable. It was disappointing to read the recent statement released by the school board pertaining to school safety personnel. It was both misleading and unprofessional. The decision to terminate the community safety officer contract was made by Council to pave the way for more appropriate school safety plan. The borough administration reached out and had meetings with district administration. It was the borough's hope we could find a solution to school safety that was workable for both parties. When that did not happen, the school board chose to release a statement placing the blame solely on Borough Council. Again, that was both misleading, unprofessional, and contained numerous blatant untruths. It's my hope that meaningful public meetings can resume between the school administration, borough administration, school board, and Borough Council. The youth in our community deserve leaders that can put aside differences and work for their future. Thank you. That is, I felt that that needed to be addressed. I think that is all. The next meeting at 7 p.m. on September 12th. Council will hold a regularly scheduled meeting. Could I have a motion to adjourn? I have a motion by Councilperson Price, second by Councilperson Stahl, to adjourn at 9:39 p.m. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? We're adjourned. See, that wasn't bad.